My sister's son stared me dead in the eye and shoved my graduation cake off the table. He watched it smash onto the hardwood floor as the red velvet frosting splattered across my shoes. He laughed and said, "Daddy says you are used to eating leftovers, so eat it off the ground like a dog." The entire table of 30 guests erupted in laughter. My brother-in-law Hunter slapped his knee in amusement. My sister Vanessa just sipped her wine. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to reprimand him, but my mother just sighed and said, "Clean that up. Desiree, do not make the boy cry over a cake." I did not say a single word. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply took a napkin, wiped the frosting off my heel, turned around, and walked out the door. That evening, my mother sent a text to the family group chat saying, "We have decided to cut ties with you until you learn to take a joke and apologize to your nephew." My sister liked the message. I poured myself a glass of vintage wine in my penthouse apartment, opened my laptop, and replied with one sentence. "Understood. I am removing my name from every loan and asset tomorrow morning." By midnight, my phone screen was lighting up with 73 missed calls. Before I tell you how I dismantled their entire lives in 24 hours, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the family scapegoat who finally fought back. My name is Desiree, and at 34 years old, I had just accomplished the impossible. I had secretly completed my executive MBA from Harvard while working 80-hour weeks as a merger and acquisition specialist. To my family in Atlanta, however, I was just Desi, the administrative assistant, who was lucky to pay her rent. They had no idea that the rent I paid was actually the mortgage on the $3 million penthouse I owned downtown. They had no idea about my portfolio, or the fact that I was the silent angel investor keeping their entire illusion of wealth afloat. It was a humid Sunday afternoon in Buckhead when I pulled up to my sister Vanessa's house. I say her house, but that is a legal technicality that only I know the truth about. On paper, the deed to the sprawling 4-bedroom colonial estate belongs to a holding company. That holding company belongs to me. I bought the house 5 years ago when Vanessa got pregnant with Brayden and cried about needing a safe yard for her child. I let her and her husband Hunter live there for a rent of $1 a year. I repeat, $1 a year. Yet as I parked my 10-year-old Audi sedan on the street because the driveway was full of luxury cars, I felt that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. The driveway was a showcase of vanity. Right in the center gleamed a brand new Range Rover autobiography. It was jet black and still had the temporary tags. I saw Hunter standing next to it holding a beer surrounded by 3 other men who looked like they played more golf than they did work. I stepped out of my car, balancing the heavy cake box in my arms. I had spent $400 on this cake. It was a custom red velvet creation with gold leaf detailing and the Harvard crest hand painted in icing. It was the one thing I wanted to celebrate. I walked up the driveway, and I could hear Hunter's booming voice. "Yeah, business is booming," Hunter said, leaning against the hood of the Range Rover. "The tech startup life is brutal, but the rewards are sweet. I just picked this bad boy up yesterday. Paid cash. You know how it is when you close a major deal." I stopped walking for a second. Paid cash. The audacity made me want to laugh out loud. I knew for a fact that Hunter had not closed a deal in 3 years. His startup was a ghost ship. The only reason he had that car was because I had co-signed the lease on Thursday. He had called me begging, saying he needed a reliable vehicle to drive clients around, and his credit score was too low. I had signed the papers electronically during a board meeting just to get him to stop calling. He did not pay cash. I was the guarantor. If he missed a payment, the bank would come for me. I walked past them trying to be invisible, but Hunter saw me. "Oh, look who it is," Hunter shouted. "The help has arrived." "Hey Desi, you are late. The ice is running low in the cooler. Grab a bag from the garage on your way in, will you?" The men laughed. I tightened my grip on the cake box. "Hello to you too, Hunter," I said, keeping my voice even. "This is my graduation cake. Remember, I told you I finished my degree." Hunter waved his hand dismissively. Right, the online course thing. Good for you, Desi. Maybe now you can get a promotion to office manager. Anyway, get the ice. I walked into the house bypassing the garage. The air conditioning hit me along with the smell of expensive perfume and catering. Vanessa was in the kitchen directing the hired servers. She looked stunning, I have to admit. She was wearing a silk floral dress that I knew cost more than my first car. Her hair was perfectly blown out, and she had that glow of a woman who has never had to worry about a utility bill in her life. Vanessa looked at her watch as I entered. "You are 40 minutes late, Desiree," she said without saying hello. "And what are you wearing?" I looked down at my outfit. A simple navy blue linen jumpsuit and comfortable flats. "I came straight from the airport," Vanessa, I said. "I had a client meeting in New York." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Always the busy bee working for someone else. You could at least have put on some heels." "This is a high-end event, Desi. My followers are going to be seeing this on Instagram. I cannot have you looking like the staff." She finally looked at the box in my hands. "Is that the cake?" she asked. "Yes," I said, setting it down on the marble island. I opened the lid, revealing the beautiful crimson and gold design. Vanessa wrinkled her nose. "Red velvet," she sighed. "I told you Brayden wanted chocolate. And what is that logo?" "It is the Harvard crest, Vanessa," I said, feeling a spark of irritation. "It is my graduation cake. We agreed we would celebrate my degree today, too." Vanessa let out a short, harsh laugh. "Oh, honey," she said, patting my arm with a condescending smile. "We agreed you could bring a cake. We did not agree to make this about you. Today is about celebrating Hunter's new venture and our family's success. Nobody cares about your little certificate, Desi. Just put it on the dessert table in the back and try to hide that logo. It looks pretentious." I felt like I had been slapped. My little certificate. I had graduated top of my class from the most prestigious business school in the world. But to my sister, who dropped out of community college after one semester because it was too stressful, I was just being pretentious. I moved the cake to the dessert table, placing it behind a tower of expensive macarons. I spent the next hour doing exactly what they expected of me. I fetched drinks. I helped the servers clear plates. I listened to my parents, Otis and Clara, brag to their friends about Vanessa's interior design skills, even though she had never designed anything other than the house I paid for. "Desiree, come here." "My father?" Otis called out from the patio table. He was sitting with my mother and Hunter's parents. I walked over, wiping my hands on a napkin. "Yes, Dad?" "Refill your mother's wine," he said, holding up her empty glass. "And bring another round of beers for the boys. You are closer to the bar." "I am not the waitress, Dad," I said quietly. "There are hired staff for that." "My mother." Clara frowned, deep lines forming on her forehead. "Do not be difficult, Desiree," she hissed. "We are guests in your sister's home. Show some gratitude. Look at this beautiful party she organized. You could learn a thing or two about hospitality from her instead of always burying your nose in work." Gratitude. I was standing on the deck I paid for, looking at the pool I paid to have heated, listening to them tell me to be grateful to the sister who lived here for free. I took the glass from my mother's hand. "Fine," I said. "One last round." I brought the drinks. Then it was time for cake. Vanessa clapped her hands, gathering everyone around the main table. "Attention, everyone," she announced. Before we cut the main cake for Hunter's celebration, my sister brought a little something. She finished some classes and wanted to share. She gestured vaguely to my cake. It was a backhanded introduction, but I stepped forward, hoping for just one moment of recognition. I picked up the silver cake knife. Brayden, my 8-year-old nephew, came running up. He was wearing a Ralph Lauren polo shirt that was already stained with barbecue sauce. He was a terror of a child, completely unspoiled and never told no. "I want cake," Brayden screamed, reaching for the knife. "I want the piece with the gold thingy." He pointed a sticky finger right at the Harvard crest. "Hold on, Brayden," I said, forcing a smile. "Let Auntie Desi make a wish first. This is a special cake." "I do not care," Brayden yelled, stomping his foot. "I want it now. Dad said this is a party for winners. You are not a winner." The patio went silent. I looked up at Hunter. He was smirking, holding his beer bottle. "Brayden, what did you say?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Hunter chuckled. "I might have mentioned that winners drive Range Rovers and losers drive old Audis Desi. Kids repeat what they hear." "No offense." Brayden took my silence as permission. He reached out with both hands and grabbed the side of the cake box. "I want it!" he screamed. "No, Brayden, stop!" I said, reaching out. But he yanked the box hard. The heavy cardboard slid off the polished table. Time seemed to slow down. I watched the cake tilt. I saw the gold leaf catch the afternoon sun. Then gravity took over. The cake flipped in the air and landed face down on the expensive teak decking with a wet, heavy thud. Red frosting exploded everywhere. It splattered onto the hem of Vanessa's silk dress. It coated the legs of the table, and a large glob of it landed squarely on the toe of my suede shoes. The silence was absolute for 1 second. Then Brayden started laughing. "Look," he pointed. "It looks like blood. Auntie Desi killed the cake." Hunter burst into loud, raucous laughter. "That is rich!" Hunter roared, slapping the table. "Gravity 1, Desi 0. Hey kid, that is what I call a power move." I stood there frozen, staring at the ruined symbol of 2 years of sleepless nights and hard work. I looked at my sister. Surely she would be angry. Surely she would discipline him. Vanessa looked at her dress and sighed. "Great," she said. "Now I have to get this dry cleaned. Brayden, be careful next time." That was it. No apology, no scolding. I looked at my parents. My father was suppressing a smile. My mother looked annoyed, not at Brayden but at the mess. "Mom," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "did you see what he did?" My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, stop making a face, Desiree. It was an accident. He is just a spirited boy." Then Brayden looked at me with a malice that was too old for his face. "Daddy says you are used to eating leftovers," he said loud and clear, "so eat it off the ground. You are a bottom feeder anyway." The insult hung in the air. Bottom feeder. That was a term Hunter used for people in entry-level jobs. He had taught his son to call me that. Hunter was laughing so hard he was choking on his beer. "He got you there, Desi?" Hunter wheezed. "Go on. 5-second rule. It is probably still good. Eat it off the ground. It builds character." I looked around the table. 30 people. Friends, family, neighbors. They were all looking at me. Some were looking away in embarrassment, but most were smiling, following Hunter's lead. My mother leaned forward. "Well, do not just stand there staring at it, Desiree," she said sharply. "Clean that up. Do not leave a mess on your sister's deck, and do not make the boy cry by yelling at him. It is just a cake. We can buy another one at the grocery store for $20. Just a cake. Grocery store." Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a lock turning, the final tumbler falling into place. I looked at the red frosting on my shoe. I looked at Hunter's red face laughing at me. I looked at the house that I owned, the car that I leased, and the family that I supported. I slowly bent down on one knee. Hunter cheered. "That is it, Desi. Bow down." I reached into my purse and pulled out a linen napkin. I did not touch the cake. I carefully wiped the frosting off my shoe. I cleaned every speck until the suede was spotless. Then I stood up and dropped the dirty napkin right into the middle of the smashed cake. "Desiree." "What are you doing?" my mother asked, her voice rising. "Pick that up." I looked her in the eye. "No," I said. The word was so foreign to them that they blinked. "Excuse me," Vanessa said, stepping forward. "You cannot just leave trash on my floor." "Your floor," I repeated. I looked at Vanessa. Then I looked at Hunter. Then I looked at my parents. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile I gave across the boardroom table right before I acquired a company and fired its incompetent management. "Enjoy the party," I said. I turned around and walked away. "Desiree?" "Come back here," my father shouted. "Do not you walk away from your mother." "Hey, take the trash with you," Hunter yelled. I kept walking. I walked through the house I paid for. I walked past the garage where the car I paid for was parked. I got into my old Audi and started the engine. As I drove away from the estate, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the perfect manicured lawns of Buckhead. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. My heart rate was calm. I did not turn on the radio. I drove in silence all the way to my building in downtown Atlanta. I pulled into my private parking spot, took the elevator up to the 45th floor, and walked into my penthouse. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. It was the text from Mom. "We have decided to cut ties with you until you learn to take a joke and apologize to your nephew. Your arrogance is destroying this family. Do not contact us." I saw the notification. Vanessa liked the message. Hunter had sent a follow-up text. "Don't forget to transfer Braden's tuition for next semester by Monday. By the way, you ruined the vibe today. Thanks a lot." I walked to my wine cellar. I selected a bottle of Chateau Margaux worth more than Hunter's entire wardrobe. I poured a glass and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window looking out over the city lights. They wanted no contact. They wanted me to go away. They thought they were punishing me. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like freedom. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. I logged into my secure banking portal. I clicked on the tab labeled Family Assets. There it was. The mortgage, the car lease, the startup loan, the supplementary credit cards, the insurance policies. I cracked my knuckles. Understood. I typed into the group chat. "I am removing my name from every loan and asset tomorrow morning." I hit send. Then I picked up my phone and dialed the number for my personal attorney. It was Sunday night, but he picked up on the second ring. "Sterling," I said. "I need to initiate the scorched earth protocol." "Yes. Everything. The house, the car, the cards. Serve them the eviction notice tomorrow morning." I hung up. My phone lit up. Hunter was calling. I declined it. Mom was calling. I declined it. Vanessa was calling. I watched the screen until it went dark. Then it lit up again. And again. By midnight, I had 73 missed calls. But I was sleeping like a baby. The empire was about to crumble, and for the first time in my life, I was not the one holding up the roof. I stood up slowly. My knees cracked slightly from the hardwood floor, but my posture was straight. In my hand, I held the linen napkin. It was heavy with the smashed remains of the red velvet cake and the dirt from the floor. The room was still echoing with the remnants of laughter, but it was dying down now, replaced by an awkward tension. Hunter was still grinning, waiting for me to say something to lash out or to cry. He wanted a reaction. He wanted the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I looked at the napkin in my hand. Then I looked at the table where Hunter sat with his beer. I did not say a word. I simply tossed the napkin. It flew through the air in a slow arc and landed with a wet thud right in the center of the table directly in front of Hunter. A splatter of red frosting jumped from the napkin and landed on his white linen shirt. "Hey," Hunter shouted, jumping back his chair, scraping loudly against the deck. "Watch it, Desi. This is dry clean only." My mother gasped. "Desiree, apologize immediately," she demanded. I looked at them one last time. I looked at my sister Vanessa, who was busy wiping a speck of frosting from her shoe, ignoring the fact that her husband had just humiliated her sister. I looked at my father, who was shaking his head in disappointment. I memorized this scene. I wanted to remember exactly how they looked in this moment of arrogance because I knew they would never look this comfortable again. I turned on my heel and walked toward the sliding glass doors. "Where are you going?" my mother called out. "We have not cut the main cake yet. Do not you dare walk away from this family." I kept walking. I walked through the living room with its high ceilings and custom crown molding. I remembered signing the check for that molding. I walked through the foyer with the crystal chandelier that I had imported from Italy as a housewarming gift. I walked out the front door and let it close softly behind me. The humid Atlanta air hit my face, but it felt cleaner out here, away from the toxicity of that dining room. I walked down the long driveway past the line of luxury cars. I walked past Hunter's gleaming Range Rover. I resisted the urge to key it. That would be petty, and I was not petty. I was strategic. Besides, technically, that car belonged to me, so damaging, it would only hurt my own asset portfolio. I reached my car parked on the street. It was a gray Audi A4, almost 10 years old, with a dent in the rear bumper and over 200,000 miles on the odometer. It was the car of a struggling administrative assistant. It was the perfect camouflage. I got in, and the leather seat creaked, familiar and comforting. I started the engine, and it rumbled to life. As I drove away from the manicured lawns of Buckhead, I felt a physical weight lifting off my shoulders. I navigated the winding roads lined with oak trees and mansions. For years I had driven this route with a knot of anxiety in my stomach, wondering if I had brought the right gift or if I was wearing the right clothes. Today that anxiety was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I merged onto the highway heading toward downtown. The skyline of Atlanta rose up in the distance, glittering in the twilight. That was my world. Not the suburbs with their petty gossip and keeping up with appearances, but the steel and glass canyons of the city where power was real currency. I drove for 20 minutes until I reached the private entrance of the Sovereign, one of the most exclusive residential towers in the city. I pulled up to the valet stand. The attendant, a young man named Marcus, smiled as he saw my old car. He knew better than to judge. "Good evening, Miss Washington," Marcus said, opening my door. "Rough day. You have no idea, Marcus," I said, handing him the keys. "Keep it close. I might need to go out again, but probably not." I walked through the lobby. The marble floors echoed with the sound of my heels. I bypassed the main elevators and swiped my black key card at the private elevator bank. The doors slid open instantly. As the elevator shot up to the 45th floor, I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of polished metal and silence. When the doors opened, I stepped directly into my penthouse. It was a different universe from the house I had just left. Here everything was cool, sleek, and modern. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Modern art pieces that I had collected over the years hung on the walls. There was no clutter, no noise, just the hum of the high-tech climate control system and the twinkling lights of the city below. I kicked off my shoes. The suede was clean now, but I would never wear them again. I walked to the kitchen island, which was made of imported granite, unlike the laminate disguised as marble in Vanessa's kitchen. I reached for my phone to check the time. The screen was dark. I had put it on silent when I left the party. I tapped the screen and it flooded with notifications. There were missed calls from my father. There were missed calls from Vanessa. But right at the top was a message from the family group chat. It was from my mother. I unlocked the phone and opened the message. My thumb hovered over the screen as I read the words. "Desiree," the message read. "Your attitude today was appalling. You ruined a celebration that was meant to be about family success. Your father and I have discussed this, and we agree that you need time to reflect on your jealousy and bitterness. We have chosen to sever all contact with you for the time being. Do not come to the house. Do not call us. Stay away until you are ready to offer a sincere apology to Hunter and your sister. We hope this silence teaches you the value of family." I read it twice. Sever all contact. They were cutting me off. They were punishing me. They thought that by withdrawing their presence, they were depriving me of something valuable. They thought I was desperate for their validation, desperate to be included in their circle of mockery. I looked at the bottom of the screen. Vanessa had liked the message. Hunter had replied with a thumbs-up emoji. A laugh bubbled up in my throat. It started low and quiet, and then it grew until it filled the empty apartment. It was not a happy laugh, but it was not sad either. It was the laugh of someone who had just realized the cage door had been open the entire time. They wanted no contact. They wanted me to stay away. I walked over to my wine fridge. I scanned the rows of bottles until I found what I was looking for. A bottle of Screaming Eagle Cabernet Sauvignon. It was worth $500. I had been saving it for a special occasion. I had thought about opening it when I got my Harvard diploma, but I had decided to share a cake with my family instead. What a mistake that had been. I pulled the cork with a satisfying pop. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. I poured the dark red liquid into a crystal glass. I swirled it around, watching the legs of the wine coat the glass. I walked over to the window and looked down at the city. Somewhere out there in the distance, in the dark suburbs, my family was probably sitting around that table eating the main cake, laughing about how they had put me in my place. They were probably congratulating themselves on their toughness, thinking they had taught me a lesson. They had no idea that they had just severed their own lifeline. They had no idea that the credit cards in their wallets, the cars in their driveways, and the roof over their heads were all tethered to the very person they had just exiled. I raised the glass to my reflection in the window. To the value of family, I whispered to the empty room. I took a sip. The wine was complex, rich, and bitter, exactly like the moment. Then I set the glass down and walked over to my desk. I sat down in my leather executive chair and woke up my laptop. The blue light of the screen illuminated my face. I cracked my knuckles. I opened the group chat one last time. I typed a reply. Understood. Kau duk ukte. I hit send. Then I opened a new email draft addressed to my attorney Sterling. Subject line: immediate asset liquidation. I began to type. Dear Sterling, initiate protocol Omega immediately. I want the car reported as unauthorized use. I want the house listing activated. And cancel the insurance policies effective midnight tonight. No exceptions. I paused for a second, my finger hovering over the enter key. I thought about Braden's face as he pushed the cake. I thought about my mother's sigh. I pressed enter. The email swooshed away. I picked up my wine glass again and leaned back in my chair. The show was about to begin, and I had the best seat in the house. I placed the crystal glass on a coaster. The condensation ring was the only mess I allowed in my sanctuary. I walked to the hidden panel behind the abstract painting in my study. It was a painting I had bought at an auction in Zurich, a swirling mass of black and gold that reminded me of chaos under control. I placed my hand on the biometric scanner hidden in the frame. A soft green light scanned my fingerprint, followed by a retinal scan. Overkill for some perhaps, but necessary for me. Inside this wall safe were not jewels or cash, but something far more valuable. Information. Leverage. The documents that defined my family's entire existence. I pulled out a thick, leather-bound binder and carried it to my desk. I sat down in my Aeron chair, the cool leather grounding me. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of old paper and expensive mahogany. In that moment, I ceased to be Desiree, the daughter, the sister, the doormat. I engaged the part of my brain that had made me the youngest partner in my firm's history. I entered what my colleagues called shark mode. In the world of mergers and acquisitions, you do not make decisions based on emotion. You look at the balance sheet. You look at the return on investment. And when a subsidiary is bleeding cash, offering zero value, and actively toxic to the parent company, you do not keep funding it out of nostalgia. You liquidate it. I opened my laptop. The screen came to life, illuminating my face in a harsh blue glow. I logged into my secure cloud server, bypassing 3 layers of encryption. I opened a spreadsheet titled simply, The Family Portfolio. I began the audit. Item number 1, the Buckhead Estate. I pulled up the deed. Value $1.2 million. Owner D. Washington Holdings, LLC. Tenant Vanessa and Hunter Smith. Current rent, paid $0. Lease terms, $1 annually, renewable at the owner's discretion. I scrolled down to the termination clause. It was standard boilerplate that I had inserted years ago, mostly to protect myself from liability. Clause 4. A stated that the tenancy could be terminated immediately if the property was used for illegal activities, or if the tenant engaged in conduct detrimental to the owner's reputation. I thought about the cake on the floor. I thought about the text message telling me to stay away. That was conduct detrimental to my reputation. I marked the status of the property as active liquidation. Item number 2. The business loan. I navigated to the folder labeled Hunter Tech Ventures. 2 years ago, Hunter had come to me with a pitch deck that was mostly buzzwords and clip art. He wanted $250,000 to build a revolutionary app. I knew it was nonsense. But Vanessa had been pregnant with Brayden, and she had begged me to give him a chance to be a man. So I did. But I didn't give him a gift. I gave him a convertible note with strict covenants. I pulled up the forensic accounting tracker I had attached to the business account. I had never checked it before trusting them. Now the numbers screamed at me in red. There was no app development. The funds had been drained systematically. Withdrawals at casinos in Las Vegas, payments to luxury car rental agencies, and recurring transfers to an account labeled Amber Consulting. I did not know who Amber was, but I knew she wasn't a software engineer. Hunter was not just a failure, he was a fraud. Clause 14. B of our agreement allowed the investor to demand immediate repayment in full if funds were misappropriated. I highlighted the entire loan amount. Status callable immediately. Item number 3. The black card. I logged into my American Express Centurion account. This was the card I had given Vanessa for emergencies only. I clicked on the supplementary cardholder tab. The statement for the last 30 days was a testament to my own stupidity. $4,000 at Saks Fifth Avenue, $800 at a day spa, $300 for a sushi dinner on a Tuesday. Emergencies. My sister was living the life of a socialite on the salary of a ghost. I looked at my own shoes, the ones I had just cleaned frosting off of. I drove an old car and wore sensible clothes so my sister could pretend to be a princess. I hovered my mouse over the freeze card button. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Click. The status changed to suspended. Item number 4. The parents. This was the hardest one, but necessary. I pulled up the insurance portal. My parents Otis and Clara were both on my premium executive health plan. It cost me $4,000 a month. It covered my father's heart medication and my mother's therapy sessions where she presumably complained about her ungrateful daughter. They had told me today that I was arrogant. They had told me to stay away. If I was so terrible, surely my money was terrible too. I would not want to burden them with the financial support of a daughter they were ashamed of. I selected their profiles. Status cancel, effective midnight. I sat back looking at the screen. The spreadsheet was a sea of red. For a decade, I had been the silent engine keeping this family running. I had insulated them from the cold, hard reality of the world. I had let them believe their own hype, and in return, they had treated me like a servant. They had bitten the hand that fed them, not realizing that hand was the only thing holding them up. The ROI was negative. Negative respect, negative love, negative gratitude. It was time to cut the losses. I opened my secure email client. I started a new message addressed to Sterling, my senior attorney, and the only man who knew the true extent of my wealth. Subject Protocol Omega. I began to type. The keys clattered loudly in the silence of the penthouse. Sterling, effective 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Execute Protocol Omega regarding the Washington and Smith files. 1. Issue an immediate eviction notice for the Buckhead property. Site breach of contract and hostile environment. Use the Sheriff's Department for service. 2. Report the Range Rover as unauthorized use. I want it repossessed. Do not contact the driver. Contact the authorities. 3. Demand full repayment of the Hunter Tech loan. Attach the forensic report regarding the misuse of funds. Prepare criminal referral documents for fraud and embezzlement. 4. Notify the insurance provider of the cancellation of all dependents on my policy. 5. Draft a cease and desist order. If they want no contact, let us give them no contact, legally binding and permanent. Do not accept phone calls. Do not accept negotiations. Scorched earth sterling. Burn it all down. Regards, Desiree. I read the email over. It was cold. It was clinical. It was perfect. It was the death warrant of their comfortable, deluded lives. My finger hovered over the send button. I thought about the little boy learning to hate me. I thought about my mother's dismissal. I thought about Hunter's laugh. I did not feel guilt. I felt the satisfying click of a puzzle piece falling into place. I pressed the enter key. The screen refreshed. A progress bar appeared for a brief second, and then a notification popped up in green text against the black background. Message sent. Processing asset liquidation. I closed the laptop with a snap. The room plunged back into darkness save for the city lights outside. I stood up and walked back to the window. The game was over. They just didn't know it yet. Tomorrow morning when the sun rose over Atlanta, their world would end, and mine would finally begin. Monday morning arrived with the kind of bright, aggressive sunshine that usually signals a fresh start. But for my brother-in-law Hunter, it was the spotlight for his public humiliation. I was not there physically, but thanks to the high-definition security system I had installed to protect my investment, I had a front-row seat to the show. I sat in my office on the 45th floor sipping my espresso and watching the live feed on my second monitor. At 7:30 in the morning, the front door of the Buckhead estate opened. Hunter stepped out, looking like a man who owned the world. He was wearing a beige linen suit that I knew for a fact cost $2,000 because the charge had appeared on my supplementary card last month. He had a silk pocket square tucked neatly into his breast pocket, and his sunglasses were perched on top of his head. He turned back to blow a kiss to Vanessa, who was still in her bathrobe holding a cup of coffee. "Go get them, Tiger," Vanessa said, her voice tinny through the camera's microphone. "Close that deal." "You know I will, babe," Hunter replied, flashing that winning smile that had conned my sister into marriage. "I am meeting the investors at the club. Big things are happening today." He was lying, of course. I had checked his calendar, which was synced to the family cloud account I paid for. There was no meeting with investors. There was a tea time booked at the country club for a foursome of golf. He was going to spend the day drinking scotch and hitting balls while pretending to be a titan of industry. Hunter adjusted his cuffs, picked up his leather briefcase, and strutted down the walkway toward the three-car garage. He was whistling. It was a tune I recognized. It was the same song he had been humming yesterday when he told me to eat cake off the floor. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the key fob for the Range Rover. He pressed the unlock button. He expected to hear the familiar chirp of the alarm disarming and see the headlights flash. Instead, there was silence. Hunter pressed the button again. Nothing. He stopped walking. He frowned, looking down at the key in his hand. He pressed it a third time harder now, jamming his thumb into the plastic. He looked up, expecting to see the black beast of a car parked in its usual spot in the center bay. But the bay was empty. The concrete floor was bare except for a small oil stain where the car had been sitting 12 hours ago. Hunter froze. The whistle died on his lips. He blinked rapidly as if his brain could not process the visual data. He took a few hesitant steps forward into the garage, looking left and right as if a 3-ton SUV could be hiding behind a lawnmower. "Babe," he shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "Babe, where is the Rover? Did you park it on the street?" Vanessa came running out to the porch. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I have not touched it. You parked it there last night after the party." "It is gone," Hunter yelled. "The car is gone." He ran out to the street, scanning the neighborhood. The street was empty. The beautiful black autobiography Range Rover with the massage seats and the Meridian sound system was nowhere to be seen. Hunter's face turned a deep shade of red. He threw his briefcase onto the driveway. The expensive leather skidded across the concrete. "I have been robbed," he screamed. "Call the police, Vanessa. Someone stole my car. Call 911 right now." I watched as he paced back and forth, kicking at the landscaping. He looked like a child whose toy had been taken away. He was furious. He was righteous. He truly believed he was the victim of a grand theft auto. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled into the driveway. It was the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. Two officers stepped out. One was a tall man with a weary expression, the kind of officer who had seen it all. Hunter rushed toward them, waving his arms. "Thank God you are here," Hunter said, wiping sweat from his forehead. It was a professional job. They must have hacked the keyless entry. "My Range Rover is gone. It is a $150,000 vehicle. I need you to put out an APB immediately. I have distinct plates." The officer held up a hand to slow him down. "Calm down, sir," the officer said, pulling out a notepad. "Let us start with your name and the vehicle details. Are you the owner?" "Yes, I am the owner," Hunter said, puffing out his chest. "Hunter Smith. It is my car. I bought it last week." The officer nodded and radioed in the details. Hunter stood there, hands on his hips, glaring at the empty garage spot, waiting for justice to be served. I took another sip of my espresso. This was the part I had been waiting for. The officer listened to his earpiece. His expression changed from concern to confusion, and then to something that looked suspiciously like amusement. He looked at Hunter, and then back at his notepad. "Sir," the officer said, his tone significantly cooler. "Dispatch says that vehicle was not stolen. It was recovered." "Recovered?" Hunter asked, confused. "What does that mean? Who recovered it?" "It was repossessed at 4 this morning," the officer stated flatly, "by a towing company contracted by the owner." "Repossessed?" Hunter sputtered. "That is impossible. I paid cash. I financed it, but the payments aren't due yet. There must be a mistake." The officer looked at the screen of his handheld device. "According to the registration, the vehicle is owned by a Ms. Desiree Washington. The report says she authorized a repo due to unauthorized use by a non-contract driver." Hunter went pale. The name hit him like a physical blow. "Desiree," he whispered. "That is my sister-in-law. She co-signed. She is just the guarantor." "She cannot do this. It is my car. I drive it." The officer chuckled, shaking his head. "Sir, if her name is on the title and your name is not, then it is her car. You are just borrowing it. And it looks like she decided to stop letting you borrow it. This is a civil dispute, not a criminal matter. Unless you want to file a report for filing a false police report, I suggest you call the owner and work it out." "But how am I supposed to get to my meeting?" Hunter shouted, losing his composure entirely. "She stole my car. Arrest her." "I cannot arrest someone for taking their own property, sir," the officer said, closing his notebook. "Have a nice day, Mr. Smith. And maybe try Uber." The police got back in their cruiser and drove away, leaving Hunter standing alone in the driveway. The neighbors were starting to come out onto their porches, drawn by the shouting and the police lights. Hunter looked around, realizing he had an audience. His humiliation was public. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I could see the rage in his eyes. He jabbed at the screen, dialing my number. On my desk, my phone lit up. Hunter calling. I watched the screen. I did not decline it. I just let it ring. In the video feed, I saw Hunter put the phone to his ear. He waited. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then the line clicked. He opened his mouth to scream at me. But he never got the chance. The automated operator voice spoke clearly through the line. "The subscriber you are trying to reach is not accepting calls from this number. Goodbye." Hunter pulled the phone away from his ear, staring at it in disbelief. He dialed again. "The subscriber you are trying to reach is not accepting calls from this number." He tried a third time, blocked. Hunter let out a scream of pure frustration. He threw his phone onto the grass. He looked at the empty garage. He looked at his watch. His golf game was starting in 30 minutes. His car was gone. His ride was gone. His status symbol was gone. And for the first time since I had known him, the arrogant smirk was gone too. I leaned back in my chair and closed the video window. Phase 1 complete. But the car was just the beginning. The real pain was about to start when he tried to pay for that Uber he needed. Because that ride-sharing account was linked to the platinum card in his wallet. and that card was currently frozen solid. I opened my email. A new message had arrived from Sterling, my lawyer. Subject: eviction notice served. I smiled. It was going to be a very busy Monday. The scent of eucalyptus and expensive lilies filled the air of the Sanctuary Spa in Buckhead. It was the kind of silence that cost $300 an hour. Soft flute music drifted from hidden speakers, and women in plush white robes moved like ghosts across the heated marble floors. At the center of the reception area, my sister Vanessa was putting on a show. She held her phone up high, the ring light reflecting in her perfectly manicured eyes. She was live streaming to her 5,000 Instagram followers. "Hey guys, happy Monday," she chirped, tilting her head to show off her fresh diamond peel facial. "Just finishing up a little self-care day. You know what they say, you cannot pour from an empty cup." My hubby Hunter insisted I take the day off to recharge. He is such a provider. She giggled, fake and high-pitched. She spun around to show the product wall. "Look at these new serums. I am obsessed. I think I am going to buy the whole line. Swipe up for the link, girls." I watched all of this later from the security footage the spa manager sent me, but I could imagine it perfectly. Vanessa lived for the performance. She needed the world to envy her life, even if that life was entirely subsidized by her invisible sister. Vanessa walked up to the front desk, still holding her phone, still recording. She dropped a basket full of skincare products onto the counter. The receptionist, a young girl named Sarah, smiled politely, but I knew she dreaded Vanessa's visits. Vanessa was a notorious non-tipper. "Your total today comes to $1,240, Mrs. Smith," Sarah said softly. Vanessa did not even blink. $1,200. That was more than most people made in 2 weeks. To Vanessa, it was just numbers on a screen that she never had to balance. "Put it on the black card," Vanessa said, tapping her long acrylic nails on the marble. "And add a $10 tip for yourself, honey. Buy yourself a coffee. $10 on a $1,200 bill." Generosity was not in the Smith family DNA. Vanessa reached into her Louis Vuitton bag and pulled out the heavy titanium American Express Centurion card. It was a supplementary card linked directly to my primary account. She flashed it at her phone camera. "Black card energy," she whispered to her followers. She handed the card to Sarah. Sarah inserted it into the chip reader. Vanessa went back to checking her reflection in the phone screen, fixing a strand of hair. The machine sat there processing. Usually it took 2 seconds. Today it took 10. Then it made a sound. It was not the cheerful chime of approval. It was a harsh, low beep. A beep that sounded like a door slamming shut. Sarah frowned. She looked at the screen. She pulled the card out and wiped the chip, then inserted it again. Processing. Beep. Vanessa looked up annoyed. "What is the problem?" she asked. "Just run it again. The chip is probably dirty." Sarah's face turned pink. She lowered her voice, trying to be discreet. "I am sorry, Mrs. Smith, but it says declined." Vanessa laughed. It was a loud, incredulous laugh that made the other women in the waiting area look up. "Declined," she repeated. "That is impossible. That card has no limit. Do not be ridiculous. Try it again. Or maybe your machine is broken." Sarah typed something into the terminal. "It is not the machine, ma'am," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "The error code is specific. It says, 'Do not honor.'" Vanessa rolled her eyes. She snatched the card back. "Useless technology," she muttered. "Fine. Use the Visa." She pulled out a second card. A Platinum Visa. Also a supplementary card from my account. She handed it over with a huff. Sarah inserted it. Beep. Declined. The atmosphere in the spa shifted. The quiet luxury was replaced by a thick, awkward tension. The other clients, wealthy women from the neighborhood, began to whisper. These were the Buckhead Bettys, the social circle Vanessa tried so hard to impress. They were watching. Vanessa's smile began to falter. She ended her live stream abruptly, shoving her phone into her pocket. "This is embarrassing," she hissed. "There is clearly something wrong with your system. I want to speak to the manager. Get Chloe out here. She knows me. Sarah nodded, relieved to pass this nightmare on to someone else. She picked up the phone. A moment later, the glass door of the manager's office opened. Chloe walked out. Chloe was a friend of mine. We had gone to business school together before she decided to open the spa. She knew exactly who paid Vanessa's bills. Chloe did not look happy. She walked with a brisk professional stride. She did not offer Vanessa a hug or a complimentary tea like she usually did. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Smith?" Chloe asked, her voice cool and level. Vanessa threw her hands up. "Yes, Chloe, there is a huge problem. Your receptionist is incompetent, and your machines are rejecting my cards. I have been humiliated in front of everyone. Just override it and send the bill to my sister's office like usual. I have to go." Vanessa reached for the basket of products. Chloe placed a hand on the basket, stopping her. "I'm afraid I cannot do that, Vanessa," Chloe said. Vanessa froze. "What do you mean?" Chloe took a deep breath. She spoke clearly enough for the entire room to hear. "Ms. Washington called me personally this morning. She has reported all cards associated with her accounts as lost or stolen. She specifically instructed us to remove her credit file from our system." Vanessa's face went from pale to a deep, blotchy red. "Stolen?" she sputtered. "That is insane. I am her sister. I have permission." "Not anymore," Chloe said. "The notification on the terminal is strictly flagged. It says stolen card, fraud alert." The word fraud hung in the air. The women in the waiting room were not whispering anymore. They were staring openly. One of them actually covered her mouth to hide a giggle. Vanessa looked around, trapped. The illusion of the wealthy, carefree housewife was crumbling right there on the marble floor. "Well," Vanessa stammered, "it must be a mistake. Desiree is probably just switching banks or something. She forgot to tell me. I will sort it out later. Here, just take this one." She pulled out a third card, a generic debit card. This was the only card that was actually hers, linked to the joint account she shared with Hunter. Sarah took it. She ran it. Beep, insufficient funds. The machine printed out a tiny slip of paper. Sarah looked at it and then at Vanessa with pity. "I am sorry, Mrs. Smith. It was declined for insufficient funds. The balance is negative." Vanessa looked like she was going to be sick. Hunter had drained their personal account for his gambling and fake business expenses. They had $0. Chloe crossed her arms. "Vanessa, you have received services totaling $400 plus $800 in products. You need to pay now." I left my checkbook at home," Vanessa lied. "We do not accept checks," Chloe said. "Cash or card, or we will have to call the authorities. Theft of services is a serious offense." "The authorities? The police?" Vanessa began to tremble. Tears welled up in her eyes, ruining her fresh facial. "Please, Chloe," she whispered. "Don't do this. Everyone is looking." "Then pay your bill," Chloe said mercilessly. Vanessa fumbled for her phone. Her hands were shaking so bad she almost dropped it. "I will call my mother," she said, her voice breaking. "My mother will come down here and fix this. She will write you a check, and she will have you fired for treating me like this." She dialed Clara's number. She put it on speakerphone, needing everyone to hear that she had backup, that she was still someone who mattered. The phone rang. Mom Vanessa cried out as soon as the line connected. "Mom, you have to come to the sanctuary right now. Desi did something crazy. She canceled the cards and they are threatening to call the police on me. Bring your checkbook." There was a pause on the other end. Then came Clara's voice, shrill and panicked in a way Vanessa had never heard before. "I cannot come, Vanessa. I cannot go anywhere." "Why not?" Vanessa screamed. "I am being held hostage here." Because Clara sobbed. "I am at the pharmacy. The pharmacist just told me our insurance is canceled. Your father needs his heart pills and my card just got declined too." Desiree cut us off, Vanessa. She cut us all off. I don't have the money. I don't have any money. The line went dead. Vanessa stood there holding the silent phone. The silence in the spa was absolute. The wealthy women of Buckhead were watching the golden child turn into a pauper in real time. Chloe sighed and signaled to the security guard standing by the door. I am sorry, Vanessa, Chloe said. But business is business. As the guard stepped forward, Vanessa Smith realized that for the first time in her life, there was no one coming to save her. The Buckhead Concierge Medical Center was not a place where you stood in line. It was a place where you sat in a leather armchair while sipping cucumber water until a pharmacist in a white coat brought your medication to you on a silver tray. It was the kind of medical care that only the top 1% of Atlanta could afford. For the past 5 years, my father, Otis Washington, had treated this place like his personal clubhouse. He loved the way the staff greeted him by name. He loved the way they asked about his golf game. But mostly he loved the fact that he never had to open his wallet. At 10 o'clock on Monday morning, my father walked through the glass doors with the confidence of a man who believed the world owed him a favor. He was wearing his favorite polo shirt and a cap from the country club membership that I paid for. He walked straight to the counter, bypassing the 2 other people waiting. He tapped his knuckles on the marble surface. Good morning, Alan. My father boomed, his voice echoing in the quiet room. I am here for the refill, the good stuff. Do not make me wait. I have a tea time at noon. Alan, the head pharmacist, looked up. Alan was a kind man who had been managing my family's prescriptions for years. Usually he would smile and have the bag ready, but today Alan did not smile. He looked pale. He looked like a man who had been dreading this moment since he opened the shop at 8. Good morning, Mr. Washington. Alan said, his voice tight. Could you step into the consultation room for a moment, please? My father frowned. He hated being managed. I do not have time for a consultation, Alan, my father snapped. Just give me the bag. It is the heart medication. The specialized beta blockers. You know the drill. Put it on the family account. Alan sighed. He adjusted his glasses and looked down at his computer screen. I cannot do that, sir, Alan said. My father laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. What do you mean you cannot do that? Do you know who I am? My daughter Desiree spends $50,000 a year in this establishment. Now hand me my medication. Alan turned the monitor around so my father could see it. I know exactly who your daughter is, sir, Alan said quietly. And that is the problem. At 8:05 this morning, we received a digital notification from the insurer. The primary policyholder, Desiree Washington, has removed all dependents from the executive plan. My father stared at the screen. He saw the words in bright red letters. Policy cancelled, terminated, inactive. He blinked, trying to make the words change. There must be a mistake, my father said, his confidence wavering slightly. Desiree would never do that. She knows I need this medication. It is for my heart condition. If I do not take this, I could have a stroke. I understand the medical necessity, Sir Alan said sympathetically. But without the insurance, the cost is not covered. And since the account on file has been frozen, we cannot bill it. My father waved his hand dismissively. Fine, it is just a glitch. Desiree probably switched providers and forgot to update the system. She is busy like that. How much is it? I will just pay it and she can reimburse me later. Alan hesitated. The medication is $800 per bottle, sir. Your prescription is for a 3-month supply plus the blood pressure regulators. The total comes to $3,240. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's jaw dropped. $3,000, he whispered, for pills. That is the market rate without the platinum coverage, Sir Alan explained. My father's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. The veins in his neck began to bulge. The stress on his heart that the pills were supposed to prevent was happening right there in the pharmacy. This is robbery, he shouted, slamming his hand on the counter. I am not paying $3,000. Call her. Call Desiree right now. Fix this. I cannot call her, sir, Alan said, stepping back. But you are welcome to use your phone. My father snatched his phone from his pocket. His hands were shaking not from fear, but from a rage so pure it consumed him. He could not believe that I, his daughter, the girl he had ordered to clean cake off the floor less than 24 hours ago, would dare to inconvenience him. He did not see this as a consequence. He saw it as an act of war. He jabbed my contact name. He put the phone to his ear. I was sitting in my office when the call came through. I did not answer. I let it go straight to voicemail. My father stood in the middle of the pharmacy waiting for me to pick up so he could scream at me. He was ready to unleash a torrent of abuse. He was ready to tell me how ungrateful I was, how I was trying to kill him. But instead of my voice answering hello, he heard the new greeting I had recorded late last night after my second glass of wine. The automated voice clicked on. Hello, you have reached Desiree. If you are a client or business partner, please leave a detailed message. If you are a family member calling to complain about a canceled service, please be advised that I am currently busy removing all toxic waste from my life. This includes financial parasites. Please make other arrangements. Goodbye. My father stood there frozen. The phone slowly lowered from his ear. The message had been played on speakerphone. Alan heard it. The receptionist heard it. The lady sitting in the armchair heard it. Toxic waste. Financial parasites. My father looked at Alan. For the first time in his life, Otis Washington looked small. He looked his age. He looked like an old man who had just realized that his power was an illusion paid for by someone else. I need the pills, my father muttered, his voice trembling. I really need them. Alan nodded sadly. How would you like to pay, Mr. Washington? My father reached into his back pocket. He pulled out his own wallet. It was a thin, worn leather wallet, not the designer one I had bought him for Christmas, which he kept for show. He opened it. Inside there were no platinum cards, no black cards, just a debit card from a local credit union where his meager pension was deposited every month. He knew exactly how much was in that account. He had been saving that money for a new set of golf clubs. He had been saving it for himself because he never had to spend it on necessities. He pulled out the card. His hand shook as he inserted it into the chip reader. $3,200. That was 4 months of his pension. Gone in 3 seconds. He punched in his PIN number. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying it would be approved. Beep. Approved. A tear leaked out of the corner of his eye. It was a tear of financial pain. He watched as the receipt printed out long and white like a surrender flag. Alan placed the bag of medication on the counter. Here you go, Mr. Washington. Have a good day. My father grabbed his bag. He did not say thank you. He did not say goodbye. He turned around and walked out of the luxury pharmacy. He walked slowly with a limp that hadn't been there when he entered. He walked out into the bright sunshine of a world where he now had to pay his own way. And for a man like Otis Washington, that was a fate worse than death. My office at the summit of the Sovereign Tower was designed for silence. The walls were soundproofed, the carpet was plush enough to swallow the sound of stilettos, and the triple-paned glass reduced the chaos of downtown Atlanta to a silent movie. It was a sanctuary of control. But right now, that silence was being rhythmically destroyed by the vibration of my smartphone against the mahogany desk. It buzzed, it danced, it lit up every 3 seconds with a new notification. I did not pick it up immediately. I sat in my ergonomic chair, hands folded on my lap, watching the device have a seizure. It was fascinating in a clinical sort of way. I was witnessing the real-time breakdown of a parasitic organism that had just been cut off from its host. I finally reached out and picked up the phone. It was hot to the touch. The battery was draining rapidly from the sheer volume of incoming data. I unlocked the screen and opened the family group chat. The thread name was The Smith Family Circle, a title Vanessa had chosen 3 years ago. The scroll bar was tiny, indicating hundreds of unread messages. I scrolled back to the beginning, to the moment the realization had hit them. The first wave was pure aggression. It was led predictably by Hunter. "You stole my car," Hunter wrote in all caps. "The cops said you repossessed it. Bring it back now, or I swear to God, Daisy." Then a minute later, I am going to sue you. You can't just take a man's car. I have a tea time. You are embarrassing me. I sipped my sparkling water. He was still in the anger phase. He still thought he was the victim. He still thought he had leverage. Then came the messages from Vanessa. Her tone was different. It was the frantic, high-pitched panic of a woman realizing her social standing was evaporating. Desi, please pick up the phone, she wrote. I am at the spa. The card declined. They are saying it is stolen. Everyone is staring at me. Chloe is threatening to call security. Then 3 minutes later. Desi, this isn't funny. I don't have any cash. Mom can't pay either. You need to call them and tell them it is a mistake. Just unlock the card for 5 minutes so I can leave. Please, I am begging you. I imagined Vanessa standing at that marble counter, mascara running the judgment of the Buckhead elite, burning into her skin. I felt a flicker of something in my chest. Was it guilt? I examined the feeling closely. No, it was not guilt. It was pity. Pity that a 31-year-old woman was so helpless she could not pay for her own facial. Then came the third wave. The matriarch. My mother, Clara. Desiree Washington, her text read. Answer your phone this instant. Your father is having chest pains. The pharmacy won't give him his medicine because you canceled the insurance. Are you trying to kill him? I paused at that one. The manipulation was masterful, using my father's health as a weapon. But I knew the truth. I knew my father had a debit card. I knew he had a pension. I knew he could pay for those pills if he really wanted to. He just didn't want to spend his own money. He wanted to spend mine. Mom continued. After everything we did for you, we raised you. We gave you a home. And this is how you repay us, by humiliating your sister and endangering your father. You are sick, Desiree. You are violating the laws of God and family. Fix this now. The messages began to overlap. They were typing over each other, a cacophony of digital screaming. Hunter. I am coming to your office. Vanessa, Desi. Stop ignoring us. Mom. You are a disgrace. Hunter, answer me, you coward. I watched the texts roll in like a ticker tape of toxicity. They were flailing. They were drowning. And instead of trying to swim, they were screaming at the lifeguard they had just tried to drown. I set the phone down on the desk. I turned back to my computer monitor. I had one more tab open. It was the dashboard for the joint business account I had set up for Hunter's startup. The account I had originally funded with $250,000. I looked at the transaction history I had just pulled from the forensic audit. The gambling debts, the jewelry stores, the payments to Amber Consulting. I clicked on the current balance tab. I had frozen the account an hour ago. But before I froze it, I had exercised my right as the primary investor to recall the liquid assets due to breach of contract. The screen displayed a beautiful round number, $0.00. Actually, it was technically negative $35 due to an overdraft fee from his last attempt to buy cigars. I picked up my phone again. I did not type a paragraph. I did not defend myself. I did not explain why I was doing this. Explanations are for people who care about being understood. I no longer cared. I took a screenshot of the bank balance. The bright red $0 was the only statement I needed to make. I opened the group chat. The messages were still flying. Desi, answer us. Desi, you are ruining everything. I uploaded the image. Sent. The chat went silent. I watched the little read receipts pop up. Hunter read it. Vanessa read it. Mom read it. Dad read it. For 10 glorious seconds there was no typing bubble. No one moved. The reality of that zero was hitting them harder than any words I could have spoken. That zero meant no more fake business trips, no more country club fees, no more wine at dinner, no more illusion. Then the typing bubbles appeared again. All of them at once. The explosion was coming. Hunter was probably typing a death threat. Vanessa was probably typing a suicide threat. Mom was probably quoting the Bible. I did not wait to see what they had to say. I tapped the three dots in the top right corner of the screen. I scrolled down to the bottom of the menu. Leave group. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to leave the Smith family circle? You will no longer receive messages from this group. I smiled. It was the most honest question anyone had asked me all day. Yes, I thought. I am sure. I tapped the red button. The chat window vanished. The stream of abuse disappeared. My phone screen returned to my peaceful, organized home screen. I placed the phone face down on the desk. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. I looked out at the sprawling city of Atlanta. Somewhere down there in the suburbs, 4 people were staring at their phones, realizing that the ATM had not just broken down. The ATM had walked away. I smoothed the front of my silk blouse. I had a meeting with a potential client in 20 minutes. A real businessman who built real companies. I had work to do. I walked out of my office and told my assistant to hold all personal calls. The silence was beautiful. Tuesday morning brought a courier to the lobby of the Sovereign Tower. He was not the usual uniformed professional from a major legal firm who carried documents in sealed waterproof portfolios. This man was wearing a windbreaker that smelled of stale cigarettes, and he looked uncomfortable standing next to the marble fountain. He handed the concierge a manila envelope that had been bent in the corner. When it finally reached my desk on the 45th floor, I saw the return address stamp. It was smeared. The law offices of Barry the Bulldog Steinberg, personal injury. DUI defense. Quick cash settlements. I had to suppress a laugh. Hunter had hired a billboard lawyer. I knew exactly who this man was. His face was plastered on bus benches all over the south side of Atlanta, usually accompanied by a phone number that ended in cash. He was the kind of attorney you hired when you slipped on a wet floor in a grocery store, not when you were trying to sue a corporate merger specialist with a shark tank of Ivy League litigators on retainer. I sliced the envelope open with my gold letter opener. The letter inside was printed on cheap copy paper. The font was aggressive, and the legal jargon was a disaster. Dear Ms. Washington, the letter read, we represent Mr. Hunter Smith in the matter of the unlawful theft of his vehicle, a Range Rover autobiography, and the intentional infliction of emotional distress upon his family. We demand the immediate return of the vehicle and a cash settlement of $500,000 for pain and suffering. If you do not comply within 24 hours, we will see you in court. I picked up the phone and called Sterling, my attorney. Sterling, I said, I just received a threat from Barry Steinberg. There was a pause on the line followed by a deep, sophisticated chuckle. The bulldog? Sterling asked. The guy who operates out of a strip mall next to a vape shop. Desi, please tell me you are joking. I wish I were, I replied. He is demanding $500,000 for emotional distress. Sterling laughed harder. Desiree, I could crush this with a strongly worded post-it note. He has no standing. The car is in your name. The insurance is in your name. The distress is self-inflicted. Do you want me to reply, or do you want to let him bill Hunter for a few more hours of wasted time? Let him bill him, I said. Hunter has no money to pay him anyway. Let the bulldog chase his own tail. I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. Hunter was flailing. He was trying to use intimidation tactics that might work on a frightened grandmother, but looked pathetic against someone who negotiated hostile takeovers for a living. But as the afternoon wore on, Hunter realized that his legal threat had landed with a thud. I had not called him begging for mercy. I had not returned the car. The silence from my end was making him desperate. And when a narcissist becomes desperate, they do not retreat. They seek an audience. At 3 o'clock, my personal phone buzzed. It was a text from an old college friend named Jasmine, who still moved in the same social circles as my sister. Desi, are you okay? Jasmine wrote. I just saw Hunter's Facebook post. People are going crazy in the comments. You need to see this. She attached a screenshot. I opened the image and felt a cold chill run down my spine. It was not fear. It was disgust. Hunter had posted a selfie. In the photo, he looked disheveled. His eyes were red as if he had been crying, although I suspected he had just rubbed them or used a filter. He was sitting in his living room, the living room I paid for, looking directly into the camera with a heartbroken expression. The caption was an essay, a masterpiece of fiction. "It is with a heavy heart that I share this with my friends and family," Hunter wrote. "You think you know someone. You welcome them into your home. You let them share your bread. And then when you are most vulnerable, they stab you in the back. My wife's sister, Desiree Washington, whom we have loved and supported for years, has decided to destroy our family out of pure jealousy." I scrolled down, reading the lies that flowed from his thumbs. "She came to our home yesterday and caused a scene because she was jealous of our happiness. She attacked my son verbally. And today, out of spite, she used her corporate connections to steal my car and freeze our accounts. She has left us with nothing. My son is crying, asking why Auntie Desi hates him. We are good Christian people. We did not deserve this. Please pray for us as we fight this evil." The post had been up for 2 hours. It had 400 likes. The comments were a cesspool of ignorance. The members of my parents' church were leading the charge. Sister Mary wrote shame on her. "The devil works through envy. Stay strong, Hunter." Another comment from one of Vanessa's influencer friends read, "This is abuse. You should sue her for everything she has. Poor Vanessa." And then there were the comments from people I actually knew. People I had helped. People who were now believing this narrative without hearing a single fact. My phone buzzed again. Jasmine was calling. Desi Jasmine said, her voice high with panic. "You have to reply. You have to defend yourself. They are dragging your name through the mud. People are talking about boycotting your firm. You need to comment and tell the truth." "No, Jasmine," I said, my voice calm. "I do not need to do anything of the sort." "But he is lying," Jasmine cried. "He is making you look like a monster." "Let him," I said. Jasmine listened to me. In the world of law, there is a concept called defamation per se. It means a statement is so damaging to a person's reputation that malice is assumed. Hunter just published a written statement accusing me of theft and abuse. He published it to a third party. And he did it with the intent to harm my professional standing. I switched tabs on my computer, opening the screenshot tool. I captured the entire post. I captured the comments. I captured the timestamp. "He just handed me the smoking gun, Jasmine," I explained. "If I argue with him in the comments, it becomes a family squabble. It becomes he said, she said. But by staying silent and documenting his lies, I am building a case for libel. He thinks he is winning the court of public opinion. I am preparing to win in a court of law." "But does it not hurt?" Jasmine asked quietly. "To see them say those things?" I looked at the picture of Hunter. I looked at the comment from my mother, who had written simply, "Praying for my daughter's lost soul." It did not hurt. The part of me that could be hurt by them had died yesterday on that deck. All that was left was the auditor, and the auditor had found a discrepancy that needed to be corrected. "It does not hurt, Jasmine," I said. "It clarifies." I saved the screenshots into a folder named Evidence. I dragged the folder into an email and addressed it to Sterling. Subject: Additional Claims. Body of email: "Sterling, please add defamation of character and libel to the suit. See attached evidence of public false statements regarding criminal activity. He is accusing me of grand theft auto on a public forum. Let us increase the damages sought." I hit send. Hunter thought he was destroying me. He thought that by rallying the church ladies and the neighborhood gossips, he could pressure me into submission. He did not understand that he was digging his own grave with every like and share. He was providing a time-stamped log of his own malice. I closed the browser window. I did not block him on Facebook. I wanted him to keep posting. I wanted him to feel encouraged. I wanted him to say more. Go ahead, Hunter, I whispered to the empty office. Keep talking. Every word is another zero on the settlement check you will never be able to pay. I turned back to my work. I had a merger to close. And unlike Hunter's imaginary business mine, was very real and very ruthless. Wednesday morning in Atlanta was gray and weeping rain against the floor-to-ceiling glass of my conference room. It was the kind of weather that matched the mood of a funeral. But we were not there to bury a body. We were there to autopsy a lie. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table. On the other side sat Michael Weiss, the head of the forensic accounting firm I had hired. Michael was a man who had spent 30 years finding money that people did not want found. He had brought down drug lords and corrupt senators. He did not look easily rattled. But today Michael looked uncomfortable. He kept adjusting his tie and tapping his pen against the leather folder in front of him. Desiree, he said, clearing his throat. We have completed the preliminary audit of Hunter Tech Ventures LLC. We have traced every cent of the $250,000 you invested, plus the additional loans Hunter took out in your name. I folded my hands on the table. Give it to me straight, Michael, I said. How bad is the burn rate? Did he at least build a beta version of the app? Michael sighed. He opened the folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. There is no app, Desiree, he said quietly. There is no code. There are no developers. There is no server space. Hunter Tech Ventures is a shell. It is a ghost. The only thing tech about it is the laptop he uses to transfer your money into his personal slush funds. I looked at the paper. It was a flowchart of transactions. It looked like a map of a train wreck. Where did the money go? I asked, my voice steady. $250,000 does not just vanish, Michael. Michael stood up and walked to the whiteboard. He pinned up 3 enlarged bank statements. Category 1, he said, pointing to the first sheet. Gambling. Massive, unchecked gambling. I squinted at the numbers. DraftKings. FanDuel. Offshore poker sites based in Malta. The transaction dates coincided perfectly with the times Hunter claimed he was working late at the office. He has lost over $80,000 in the last 18 months, Michael explained. He is chasing losses, Desiree. He bets $5,000 on a football game, loses it, and then bets $10,000 on a basketball game to make it back. He is a degenerate gambler. I felt a cold anger settling in my stomach. $80,000. That was my money. Money I had worked 80-hour weeks for. And he had thrown it away on digital horses and point spreads. But Michael was not finished. He pointed to the second sheet. Category 2, he said, and his voice dropped an octave. Lifestyle maintenance and gifts, but not for your sister. I looked at the statement. There were recurring charges to high-end boutiques. Gucci, Prada, Tiffany. I knew for a fact Vanessa had not received any jewelry from Tiffany in years. She complained about it constantly. Who is he buying this for? I asked. Michael slid a photograph across the table. It was a surveillance shot taken by one of his private investigators. It showed Hunter sitting at an outdoor cafe. He was laughing, holding the hand of a woman who was definitely not my sister. She was younger, perhaps 25. She had long dark hair and was wearing a dress that looked very expensive. Her name is Amber Rodriguez, Michael said. On the company books, she is listed as Amber Consulting. Hunter pays her a retainer of $4,000 a month. Consulting, I repeated dryly. What exactly is she consulting on? Michael hesitated. She is an aspiring model. Hunter pays the rent on her apartment in Midtown. It is a luxury high-rise. He also pays for her car lease. A white Mercedes C-Class. I closed my eyes for a second. My sister Vanessa was living in a house I paid for, driving a car I paid for, and begging me for money to buy groceries. Meanwhile, her husband was playing sugar daddy to a woman 10 years younger than him, using my capital. Is that it? I asked, opening my eyes. Is he just a cheating gambling thief? Because I can handle that. That is an easy divorce case. Michael sat back down. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. There is one more thing, Desiree, he said. And this is the part that changes the legal strategy. He pulled out a final document. It was not a bank statement. It was a copy of a birth certificate. We found recurring payments to a private preschool in Buckhead, Michael said. The payments were labeled charity donation on the ledger. But we called the school. Hunter is listed as the biological father and emergency contact for a student there. I looked at the birth certificate. Name of child Lucas Rodriguez. Date of birth 2 years ago. Mother Amber Rodriguez. Father Hunter Smith. The room went silent. The only sound was the rain hitting the glass. I stared at the name. Lucas. My nephew Braden was 8. This child was 2. Hunter had a secret family. For 2 years he had been coming to family dinners holding Vanessa's hand, praying before meals, and acting like the devoted patriarch. All the while he had a toddler waiting for him in a condo in Midtown. He bought the kid a pony for his birthday last month, Michael added softly, pointing to a line item. $5,000 for a party at a petting zoo. Meanwhile, your sister told me on the phone yesterday she could not afford new sneakers for Braden. I picked up the birth certificate. My hand was not shaking. It was steady as a rock. A strange feeling washed over me. It was not sadness. It was not even anger anymore. It was the feeling of holding a nuclear launch code. For years, Hunter had held the moral high ground. He was the family man, the father, the one who made Vanessa feel like she had succeeded where I had failed because she had a husband and a child. He had used that status to belittle me, to mock my single life, to call me lonely. And all this time, he was living a double life. He did not just steal my money, I whispered. He stole my sister's reality. He stole her youth. He stole her trust. I looked up at Michael. Does Vanessa know? I asked. Michael shook his head. Based on our surveillance, absolutely not. She thinks he is a stressed entrepreneur. She has no idea about the gambling. She has no idea about Amber. And she certainly has no idea about Lucas. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray city. If I release this information, I said mostly to myself, I destroy her life. She will be broken. Or Michael countered, you save her from wasting another 10 years on a sociopath. I turned back to the table. I looked at the pile of evidence, the gambling debts, the mistress, the secret child. This was no longer just about a graduation cake. This was no longer just about respect. This was an extraction mission. My sister was a hostage and she did not even know it. I gathered the documents into a neat pile. I placed the photo of Hunter and Amber on top. Thank you, Michael, I said. You have done excellent work. What do you want to do next? Michael asked. Do you want to confront him privately? Do you want to use this for leverage to get the money back? I smiled. It was a cold, dangerous smile. Money, I said. Michael, I do not care about the money anymore. The money is gone. I am writing that off as the cost of education. Then what is the plan? He asked. I tapped the birth certificate with my manicured fingernail. The plan is total illumination, I said. Hunter likes to put on a show. He likes to be the center of attention. He likes to lecture me about family values. So I think it is time we gave him the audience he deserves. I picked up the heavy file. It felt like a weapon in my hands. So he is not just a thief, I said, my voice low and final. He is also a liar, a cheater, and a father to a child my sister does not know exists. He stole her happiness to pay for his fantasy. I walked to the door of the conference room. Interesting, I said. Very interesting. I walked out, leaving Michael alone with the ghosts of Hunter's lies. I had a meeting to plan, and this time I would be the one serving the cake. Wednesday night in the Smith household was usually a culinary event. In the past, Vanessa would have hired a private chef or at the very least ordered sushi from the most expensive Japanese restaurant in Buckhead. The dining room table would be set with crystal glasses, and the conversation would revolve around their next vacation to Cabo or Aspen. But this Wednesday, the atmosphere inside the colonial mansion was thick with a suffocating silence. The crystal glasses were gathering dust in the cabinet. The private chef was long gone, and dinner was a can of cold ravioli that Vanessa had found in the back of the pantry. They sat at the long mahogany table, two people alone in a house that felt too big and too quiet. The electricity was still on, but they kept the lights dim as if trying to hide from the reality of their situation. Hunter was picking at the canned pasta with a silver fork, his face twisted in a permanent scowl. He had not shaved in 2 days, and the stubble made him look desperate rather than rugged. Vanessa sat opposite him, staring into her bowl, her eyes swollen from days of crying. "This is ridiculous," Hunter muttered, slamming his fork down. "I am not eating this garbage. It tastes like metal." "Where is the wine? We drank the last bottle yesterday." Vanessa whispered, her voice hoarse. "And we have no money to buy more, Hunter. My cards are frozen. Your accounts are empty. This is all we have." Hunter pushed his plate away, the screech of china against wood echoing in the room. "It is a temporary setback," he insisted, his voice rising with that familiar delusional confidence. "That lawyer is going to fix this. Desiree is going to pay. By next week we will be dining at Chops and laughing about this. She cannot keep this up. She is bluffing." Vanessa looked at her husband. For the first time, she really looked at him. She saw the sweat on his forehead, the manic glint in his eyes. She saw a man who was drowning and trying to pull her down with him. "She is not bluffing, Hunter," Vanessa said softly. "She took the car. She cut the insurance. She humiliated me at the spa. Desiree does not bluff. She executes." "Shut up," Hunter snapped, standing up. "You sound just like her. You should be on my side. We are the victims here." He began to pace the room, ranting about his rights and his reputation. He was in the middle of a speech about how he was going to destroy Desiree's career when a sound shattered the air. It was not a doorbell. It was a knock, but not a polite knock. It was a heavy, rhythmic pounding on the solid oak front door. It sounded like a battering ram. Boom, boom, boom. The sound vibrated through the floorboards. Vanessa jumped in her chair, clutching her napkin. Hunter froze mid-sentence. "Who is that?" Hunter asked, looking toward the foyer. "Is it her? Did she come to apologize?" He straightened his stained shirt and ran a hand through his messy hair. "I told you," he said, a smirk returning to his face. She cracked. "She is here to beg for forgiveness. Watch me handle this." Hunter strode toward the front door, his chest puffed out. He was ready to accept an apology. He was ready to negotiate terms. He unlocked the deadbolt and threw the door open with a flourish. "Well, well, Desi," he started to say. "I hope you brought a check." But it was not Desiree standing on the porch. Standing under the yellow glow of the porch light was a man in a tan uniform. He was 6 feet 4 inches tall, with shoulders that blocked out the night sky. On his chest shone a silver star. A patch on his arm read, "Fulton County Sheriff Department." Behind him in the driveway, a patrol car sat with its lights flashing silently, painting the front lawn in alternating washes of blue and red. Hunter's mouth hung open. The smirk vanished. "Can I help you, Officer?" Hunter stammered, stepping back. The sheriff did not smile. He did not ask to come in. He held a clipboard in one hand and a roll of bright orange tape in the other. "Are you Hunter Smith?" the sheriff asked, his voice deep and gravelly. "Yes," Hunter said. "Has my car been found? Is this about the theft?" The sheriff ignored the question. He looked past Hunter to where Vanessa was standing in the hallway, trembling. "And you must be Vanessa Smith." "Yes," Vanessa whispered. The sheriff nodded. He peeled a large rectangular sticker off the backing paper. It was neon orange, the kind of orange that screams danger, the kind of orange that creates a pit in your stomach. Without a word, he slapped the sticker directly onto the center of the beautiful oak door at eye level. He smoothed it down with his palm, ensuring it adhered to the expensive wood. Hunter stared at the sticker. The bold black letters stood out against the orange background. "Notice to vacate. Writ of possession. Eviction imminent. What is this? Hunter shouted, reaching out to peel it off. You cannot put that on my house. This is $1 million property. Get that off. Do not touch that notice, sir. The sheriff warned, his hand resting casually near his belt. Tampering with a legal notice is a misdemeanor. Hunter recoiled as if burned. He read the text below the bold headline. Case number 49201. Plaintiff Desiree Washington Holdings, LLC. Defendant Hunter and Vanessa Smith. The sheriff handed Hunter a stack of documents. You have been served, he stated flatly. The owner of this property has terminated your tenancy effective immediately. Terminated, Hunter sputtered. We have a lease. She cannot just kick us out. We have rights, squatters' rights. The sheriff shook his head. I read the filing, Mr. Smith. This is not a standard eviction for non-payment. This is an emergency eviction based on Clause 4A of your lease agreement. He pointed to a highlighted paragraph on the top page. Immediate termination due to discovery of illegal activities and financial fraud conducted on the premises. Hunter went pale. The fraud, the gambling, the embezzlement. Desiree had found it, and she was using it as a weapon to strip the roof from over his head. Fraud, Hunter squeaked. That is a lie. That is for a judge to decide, the sheriff said. But right now the judge has signed this order. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. If you are still here at 8 p.m. on Saturday, I will return with a team to physically remove you, and your belongings will be placed on the curb. Vanessa let out a sob. She collapsed against the hallway wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. 72 hours, she cried. Where will we go? We have no money. Hunter looked at his wife and then back at the sheriff. The humiliation was too much. The rage that had been simmering for days boiled over. He felt cornered, he felt small, and like a cornered animal he lashed out. No, Hunter screamed. This is my house. I am not leaving. You are trespassing. Get off my property. He stepped forward, getting into the sheriff's personal space. He poked a finger into the officer's chest. I said get out, Hunter roared. It was a mistake. A massive, foolish mistake. In one fluid motion, the sheriff grabbed Hunter's wrist. He spun him around and slammed him face first against the pillar of the porch. The sound of air leaving Hunter's lungs was audible. Stop resisting, the sheriff barked. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. Click, click, the cold steel locked around Hunter's wrists. You are making a mistake, Hunter wheezed, his face pressed against the brick. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, the sheriff said, tightening the cuffs. You are a man who is currently assaulting an officer of the law. Now calm down, or you will be spending tonight in a cell instead of this house. Vanessa screamed, covering her mouth with her hands. Please do not arrest him, she begged, crawling toward the door. He is just stressed. Please. The sheriff held Hunter there for a long moment, letting the reality of the situation sink in. He wanted Hunter to feel the powerlessness. He wanted him to understand that the rules of the game had changed. Finally, he pulled Hunter back from the pillar but kept the cuffs on. I am going to release you with a warning, the sheriff said, his voice low and dangerous. Because I do not want to do the paperwork tonight. But listen to me closely. You have 3 days. Pack your bags. Do not damage the property. Do not steal the copper wiring. If I come back here and find one scratch on the walls, I will arrest you for felony vandalism. Do you understand? Hunter nodded sullenly, looking at his feet. The sheriff unlocked the cuffs. Hunter rubbed his wrists, silent and defeated. The sheriff stepped off the porch. He tipped his hat to Vanessa. Good luck, ma'am. I suggest you start packing. As the sheriff walked back to his cruiser, Hunter looked up. He looked out toward the street. And then he saw them. The neighbors. The flashing blue lights had drawn a crowd. Mrs. Higgins from across the street was standing on her lawn in her bathrobe, holding her phone up. She was recording. The man next door, Mr. Henderson, was watching with his arms crossed, shaking his head. A car drove by slowly, the driver craning his neck to see the commotion. They had seen everything. The orange sticker, the shouting, the handcuffs. The facade was gone. The image of the successful tech entrepreneur was dead. Everyone in Buckhead now knew that Hunter Smith was a fraud who was being kicked out of his home by the police. Hunter retreated into the house and slammed the door shut. He leaned against it, breathing heavily. Outside, the orange sticker remained on the wood, glowing in the porch light like a mark of shame. Vanessa sat on the floor among the shadows of the empty hallway. She looked at her husband. "You said you would handle it," she whispered. Hunter did not answer. He slid down the door until he was sitting on the floor next to her. For the first time since the party, there was no bluster, no yelling, just the terrifying silence of two people realizing that the safety net they had been jumping on for years had been cut away, and the ground was rushing up to meet them very, very fast. Thursday morning brought the flying monkeys. In the terminology of psychological abuse, a flying monkey is a person sent by a narcissist to do their bidding. They are the enablers, the peacekeepers, and the gossipmongers who are manipulated into fighting battles that are not their own. Hunter and Vanessa, knowing they had lost the direct war, had deployed the infantry. My phone began to buzz at 7 in the morning. It started with Auntie Sarah, a woman who had not called me on my birthday in 10 years, but suddenly had a lot to say about family unity. "Desiree," she screamed into my voicemail, "how could you do this to your sister? She is out on the street. She has a child. You are wicked, child. You are going to burn for this." Then came the cousins. Second cousins I had only met at funerals. People who didn't know my middle name, but felt entitled to judge my financial decisions. They sent long paragraphs on Facebook Messenger telling me that money had corrupted my soul and that I was cold-hearted. I did not block them immediately. I let the messages roll in. I scrolled through them while drinking my matcha latte in my office. It was a fascinating case study in groupthink. Hunter had spun a narrative where I was the villainous landlord and he was the persecuted saint. He had omitted the gambling. He had omitted the fraud. He had definitely omitted the secret baby. At 10 o'clock, the final boss of the Flying Monkeys entered the arena. My administrative assistant buzzed me on the intercom. "Ms. Washington," she said hesitantly, "Pastor Jenkins is on line 1. He says it is a spiritual emergency." I sighed. Pastor Jenkins. He had baptized me. He had presided over every family function for 3 decades. He was a good man, but he was old-fashioned. He believed that men were the head of the household and women should be the neck that turns the head. He also believed that keeping up appearances was next to godliness. I picked up the phone. "Hello, Pastor," I said, keeping my voice professional. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Desiree." His deep baritone voice boomed. "My child, I am weeping. My spirit is heavy this morning." I leaned back in my chair. "I am sorry to hear that, Pastor. Is everything all right at the church?" "Do not play games with me, Desiree," he admonished. "I just got off the phone with your father. He is distraught. He told me about the eviction. He told me about the police. Desiree, I have known you since you were in pigtails. I know you have a hard heart sometimes, but this is cruelty. You are throwing a family out on the street." I waited for him to finish. "Pastor," I said calmly, "I am not throwing a family out. I am terminating a business arrangement with tenants who violated their lease." "They are not tenants, Desiree," he shouted. "They are flesh and blood. The Bible says to honor your father and mother. It says to love your neighbor as yourself. How can you claim to walk in the light when you are treating your own sister like an enemy? You are using your wealth as a weapon, and God does not look kindly on that." I let the silence hang for a moment. I respected Pastor Jenkins, but I respected the truth more. "Pastor," I said, "since we are quoting the good book, let us look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 10. He paused, confused. "What?" "For even when we were with you," I recited from memory, "we gave you this rule: if a man will not work, he shall not eat." I heard him sputter on the other end. Desiree, that is out of context. Hunter is trying. He has a business. Hunter has a gambling addiction. Pastor, I corrected him. Hunter has a theft problem. Hunter stole $250,000 from me. He did not use it to feed his family. He used it to feed his vices. Does the Bible tell me to enable a thief? Does it tell me to finance a lie? You are making accusations, Pastor Jenkins said, his voice hardening. Hunter is a deacon in training. He is a godly man. He told me he made some bad investments. That happens to the best of men. Forgiveness, Desiree. You must forgive 70 times 7. You are driving a wedge into a sacred marriage. You are destroying a home, a sacred marriage. I looked at the folder on my desk. The folder containing the birth certificate of Lucas Rodriguez. The folder containing the photos of Hunter kissing Amber outside a luxury condo. Pastor, I said, I want to send you something. Are you near your computer? I am, he said impatiently. But I do not see how more legal papers will change my mind about your moral failing. Just open your email, Pastor, I said. I just sent you a file. It is called The Truth. I heard the clicking of his mouse. I heard him opening his inbox. I waited. I imagined him clicking the attachment. I imagined the PDF loading on his old desktop monitor. First, he would see the forensic accounting showing the payments to the gambling sites. That might shake him, but he might still excuse it as a sickness. Then he would scroll down. He would see the rent payments for the mistress, and then he would see the birth certificate. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched out. It went from 5 seconds to 10 seconds to 30 seconds. The heavy breathing stopped. Pastor, are you still there? I asked softly. I heard a sound that sounded like a gasp, or maybe a choke. This cannot be real, he whispered. His voice was no longer booming. It was trembling. This is a child, a 2-year-old child. It is very real, Pastor, I said. Hunter Smith has been using the money I gave him for his business to support a second family. He has a mistress and a son living in Midtown. He bought that child a pony last month while my sister was begging me for grocery money. I let that sink in. So tell me, Pastor. I continued. When you say I am destroying a sacred marriage, are you referring to the marriage where the husband has a secret toddler? Or are you referring to the lie that my sister has been living in for 2 years? Because I am not the one who destroyed it. I am just the one turning on the lights. Pastor Jenkins did not answer immediately. I could hear him shuffling papers. I could hear the shattering of an image he had held dear. Hunter the deacon. Hunter the family man. Hunter the victim. Desiree, he said finally, his voice barely audible. Does Vanessa know? Not yet, I said. But she will. Oh my God, the pastor whispered. God have mercy. Pastor, I said, I understand you called to advocate for forgiveness, and I appreciate your heart. But please do not ever call me again to lecture me about my moral obligations to a man who treats his vows like a suggestion. I am not the villain in this story. I am the cleanup crew. There was a long pause. I need to go pray, he stammered. I need to pray for us all. You do that, Pastor, I said. And while you are praying, ask the Lord why he let a man like Hunter fool a man of God like you for so long. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the air conditioning. The buzz of the phone had stopped. The flying monkeys were silent. Pastor Jenkins was a gossip in his own right, but he was also a man of shock. He would not tell the parish yet. He was too embarrassed that he had been duped. But the silence was what I needed. I looked at the clock. It was noon. I had neutralized the extended family. I had neutralized the church. I had neutralized the moral high ground. Now there was only one person left to face. Vanessa. She was the collateral damage in this war, and unlike Hunter, she was innocent of the fraud, even if she was guilty of the arrogance. I picked up the file again. It was time for the final act. The lobby of the Sovereign Tower was designed to intimidate. It was a cathedral of capitalism with floors made of imported Italian marble and ceilings that soared 3 stories high. The air always smelled of white tea and cold cash. It was my kingdom. It was the place where I felt most like myself. But on Thursday afternoon, as I stepped out of the private elevator bank, I saw a stain on the perfection of my sanctuary. Standing near the security desk was a woman who looked like she had been sleeping in her car. Her hair, usually blown out to perfection, was pulled back in a messy bun with loose strands hanging limp around her face. She was wearing a tracksuit that I recognized as one of her old gym outfits, but it was wrinkled and stained. She was not wearing makeup. Her face was pale and puffy, and her eyes were red-rimmed circles of exhaustion. It took me a full second to realize that this woman was my sister, Vanessa, the golden child, the beauty queen, the woman who had told me on Sunday that I looked like the help. I stopped in my tracks, my heels clicking against the stone floor. The sound echoed in the vast space. Vanessa looked up. When she saw me, her face crumpled. She rushed forward, ignoring the security guard who tried to step in her path. "Desi," she cried out. Her voice was cracked and desperate. "Desi, thank God. I have been waiting here for 3 hours. They would not let me up. They said I was not on the list. Can you believe that? Me, your own sister." She reached out to hug me. I took a step back. It was a small movement, but it was a chasm. Vanessa's arms fell to her sides. She looked at me with confusion and hurt, the same look a dog gives when you kick it off the furniture it is used to sleeping on. "Vanessa," I said, my voice cool and level. "You are not on the list because you do not have an appointment. And looking at you, I assume this is not a business call." Vanessa let out a wet, hysterical laugh. She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her tracksuit. "Business," she choked out. "Desi, look at me. My life is falling apart. Hunter has lost his mind. He is pacing around the house screaming about lawsuits. The sheriff came last night. He put a sticker on the door, Desi. An orange sticker. The neighbors saw it. Mrs. Higgins was filming us." I stood perfectly still, clutching my leather briefcase. I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just a clinical observation of cause and effect. "I know about the sheriff," I said. "I sent him." Vanessa flinched as if I had slapped her. "How can you be so cruel?" she whispered. "I know we joked around at the party. I know Hunter can be a jerk sometimes, but to kick us out, to cut off the money. Desi, we are family. Do you remember when we were little? Do you remember when Dad lost his job and we promised we would always take care of each other? We swore, Desi. Pinky swore." She held up her pinky finger, trembling. It was a pathetic attempt to weaponize nostalgia. She was trying to drag me back to a time when I was the protector and she was the fragile princess. I looked at her pinky. Then I looked at her eyes. "I remember," I said. "I kept my promise, Vanessa. For 10 years I have paid your mortgage. I have leased your cars. I have funded your husband's imaginary business. I have kept you in silk and diamonds while I worked myself to the bone. I kept my end of the deal." "Then stop this," Vanessa begged, stepping closer again. "Just stop it. Call the bank. Unlock the accounts. Tell the sheriff it was a mistake. We can go back to normal. I will make Hunter apologize. I will make Braden apologize. We will have a do-over. Please, Desi. I am scared. We have nowhere to go. Go back to normal." The phrase hung in the air between us. Normal for Vanessa meant her living in luxury while I lived in the shadows. Normal meant her being the queen and me being the servant. Normal meant her son throwing my achievements on the floor and her laughing about it. I shook my head slowly. "There is no going back, Vanessa," I said. "You broke the contract." "What contract?" she screamed, losing her composure. "We never signed a contract for being sisters." "The social contract," I corrected her. "The unwritten rule that says if someone supports your entire existence, you treat them with basic human respect. You violated that rule on Sunday. You stood there and watched your husband and your son humiliate me. You laughed. You called my degree a little certificate. You told me to eat off the floor. Vanessa's face twisted. It was just a cake, she shrieked. It was just a stupid cake, Desiree. Are you really destroying my life over flour and sugar? Are you that petty? I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the selfishness that was woven into her DNA. She still did not get it. She thought this was about a dessert. She had no idea it was about a lifetime of erasure. I took a step closer to her, invading her personal space. I towered over her in my stilettos. It was never about the cake, Vanessa, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than her screaming. It was about the fact that you enjoyed watching me fall. You liked seeing me on my knees. You felt big when I felt small. I paused, letting her see the cold fire in my eyes. You want to talk about the cake? I continued. Fine. Let us talk about the cake. Do you remember what it looked like on the floor? Smashed. Ruined. A mess of crumbs and frosting that could never be put back together. Vanessa stared at me, tears streaming down her face. Look at your life, Vanessa, I said, gesturing to her stained tracksuit. Look at your marriage. Look at your finances. That is the cake now. It is on the floor. It is smashed. It is a disaster. I leaned in close enough to smell the stale fear on her. And here is the thing, little sister, I said. I am not the maid anymore. I am not going to get down on my knees and clean it up for you. You can eat it off the ground. Vanessa gasped. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The cruelty of my words, the perfect mirror of what her husband had said to me, hit her with the force of a physical blow. You are a monster, she whispered. Maybe, I said, straightening up and smoothing my blazer. Or maybe I am just a woman who finally learned to value herself more than she values the people who use her. I raised my hand. I did not wave goodbye. I signaled to the head of security, who had been watching from a discreet distance. He was a large man named Marcus, who had worked for me for 5 years. He knew exactly what to do. Marcus stepped forward, his face impassive. Is there a problem, Ms. Washington? He asked. Ms. Smith was just leaving, I said without looking at Vanessa. Please ensure she finds the exit. And Marcus? Yes, ma'am. She is not to be admitted to the building again. If she returns, call the police and have her trespassed. Marcus nodded. He turned to Vanessa. This way, ma'am, he said, gesturing toward the revolving doors. Vanessa looked at Marcus, then back at me. The realization that she was being thrown out of my building, just like she was being thrown out of my house, finally broke her. You cannot do this, she screamed. I am your sister. You are cold. You are ice cold. You will die alone, Desiree. You will die alone with your money, and you will rot in hell. She was screaming as Marcus took her by the elbow. She was screaming as he guided her firmly across the marble floor. The other people in the lobby, executives and clients, stopped and stared. They watched the disheveled woman being escorted out. I stood there and watched until the revolving doors spun her out onto the rainy street. You are a monster, she screamed one last time before the glass sealed her out. I stood in the silence of the lobby. My heart rate had not increased. My hands were not shaking. I turned to the receptionist, who was looking at me with wide eyes. I am going up to my office now, I said calmly. Please order me a green tea. Yes, Ms. Washington, the receptionist stammered. I walked toward the elevators. I did not look back at the street. I did not look back at the sister I had just orphaned. She called me a monster. Perhaps she was right, but she forgot that she was the one who had created me. She and her husband and our parents had fed the monster for years with their neglect and their abuse. They had poked it and prodded it and starved it of love, and now they were surprised that it had teeth. The elevator doors slid shut, enclosing me in the quiet safety of my success. I pressed the button for the 45th floor. I was rising. Vanessa was falling. And for the first time in my life, the order of things felt exactly right. Friday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. The storm clouds from the previous days had cleared, leaving the Atlanta skyline sharp and bright against a blue sky. From the boardroom on the 45th floor of the Sovereign Tower, the world looked orderly. It looked manageable. But inside Conference Room B, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. It was the designated kill zone. I arrived 15 minutes early. I was wearing a white suit, sharp-tailored and pristine. It was a power color. It said, "I have nothing to hide." It said, "I am the one in charge." I sat at the head of the 20-foot mahogany table. To my right sat Sterling, my lead attorney. To my left sat Michael, the forensic accountant. Behind us stood two junior associates ready to retrieve documents at a snap of a fingers. We were a phalanx of corporate lethality. At 10 o'clock sharp, the double glass doors opened. The receptionist looked apologetic as she ushered in the opposition. They walked in like a parade of the damned. Hunter led the way. He had been bailed out of jail late last night, presumably using the last of his parents' savings, or perhaps a loan shark. He was wearing the same suit he had worn on Monday, but it was rumpled now. He had tried to shave but missed a patch on his jawline. His eyes were wild, darting around the luxurious room, assessing the cost of the furniture, calculating the wealth he felt entitled to. Behind him came Barry Steinberg, the bulldog. In person, he was even more disappointing than his letterhead. He was a short man with a comb-over and a suit that was too shiny under the fluorescent lights. He carried a battered briefcase and smelled faintly of menthol cigarettes and desperation. Then came Vanessa. She looked smaller than she had yesterday in the lobby. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, hiding her swollen eyes. She clutched Hunter's arm as if he were a life raft, not realizing he was the anchor dragging her down. Bringing up the rear were my parents, Otis and Clara. They walked with their chins held high, clinging to their dignity like a shield. My mother carried her Bible. My father wore his country club blazer, trying to project an air of authority that had evaporated the moment his debit card was declined at the pharmacy. "Please sit down," Sterling said. His voice was smooth and deep, the voice of a man who charged $1,000 an hour. They sat on the opposite side of the table. The divide was physical and metaphorical. On one side, the truth. On the other side, a lifetime of lies. Hunter did not wait for pleasantries. He slammed his hand on the table. It was a weak gesture, but he committed to it. "Let us cut the crap," Desiree Hunter barked. "You think you are intimidating with your fancy office and your suits. But I know who you are. You are just a lonely, jealous woman who wants to ruin my happiness." Mr. Smith Barry Steinberg interrupted, placing a hand on Hunter's arm. "Let me handle this. That is why you hired me." Barry stood up. He buttoned his jacket, trying to look official. He looked at Sterling, then he looked at me. "Ms. Washington," he began, his voice taking on a rehearsed cadence. "We are here to discuss the unlawful actions taken against my client. The illegal seizure of his vehicle, the wrongful eviction from his primary residence, and the systematic harassment that has caused severe emotional distress to his entire family." He paused for effect. Nobody moved. "My client is willing to settle this matter quietly," Barry continued. "We understand that you are a public figure in the business world. A scandal involving the abuse of your own family would be devastating to your reputation. We are prepared to offer you a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for our terms." Sterling leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "And what are those terms, Mr. Steinberg?" Sterling asked, his tone bored. Barry pulled a piece of paper from his briefcase. "First, the immediate return of the Range Rover and the reinstatement of all insurance policies. Second, the transfer of the deed for the Buckhead property to Vanessa Smith solely. And third, a cash settlement of $500,000 for pain, suffering, and defamation of character." I did not blink. I did not laugh. I just stared at Hunter. $500,000, I repeated softly. Hunter leaned forward. A greedy light flickered in his eyes. "That is right, Desi," he sneered. "You dragged my name through the mud. You had me arrested in front of my neighbors. That kind of trauma has a price tag. $500,000 is cheap considering what I could do to you in the press. I could go on every talk show in America. I could tell them how the great Desiree Washington treats her own flesh and blood like garbage." My mother cleared her throat. She placed her Bible on the table. Desiree, she said, her voice trembling with self-righteous anger. Just pay him. You have plenty of money. God has blessed you with abundance and you are hoarding it while your sister suffers. Do the right thing. Sign the papers. Give them the house and let us end this nightmare. We are willing to forgive you if you fix this today. Willing to forgive me. The audacity was breathtaking. They were sitting in my office demanding my property and my money and offering me their forgiveness as a bargaining chip. I looked at Vanessa. She had not looked up once. She was staring at the polished wood of the table, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. Vanessa, I said, do you agree with these demands? Do you think I owe your husband $500,000? Vanessa flinched. She looked at Hunter. He nudged her hard with his elbow. Yes, she whispered, barely audible. We need the money, Daisy. We have to start over. I nodded slowly. I took a sip of water. The silence in the room stretched out, creating a vacuum of tension. Barry Steinberg adjusted his tie, looking confident. He thought he had won. He thought I was cornered by the threat of bad publicity. Sterling looked at me. I gave him a microscopic nod. Sterling sat forward. The bored expression vanished, replaced by the sharpness of a predator. Mr. Steinberg, Sterling said, his voice dropping an octave. I have listened to your demands. Now let me clarify the reality of your position. You have walked into a lion's den wearing a steak necklace. Barry frowned. Excuse me. There will be no settlement, Sterling said, slicing the air with his hand. There will be no transfer of deeds, and there will certainly be no payment of $500,000. Hunter stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. Then I will ruin her, Hunter shouted. I will sue you until you are bankrupt. I will tell everyone about the fraud. Sit down, Mr. Smith. Sterling barked. It was not a request. It was a command. Hunter froze. You are not here to negotiate. Sterling continued. You are here because Ms. Washington allowed you to be here. She wanted to give you one final chance to see the precipice before you walked off it. I stood up then. I walked over to the window looking out at the city. I wanted them to look at my back. I wanted them to realize how small they were. You talk about scandal, Hunter, I said to the glass. You talk about reputation. You think those things matter to me more than the truth. I turned around slowly. You want $500,000, I said, walking back to the table. It is funny you chose that number, because according to my forensic accountant, that is almost exactly the amount of money you have misappropriated from me over the last 2 years, between the loans, the credit cards, and the theft. That is a lie, Hunter screamed. That was business capital. Investments. Investments, I repeated. I looked at Michael. He slid a thick black binder across the table. It stopped directly in front of Hunter. Desi. What is this? Vanessa asked, looking at the binder with fear. Open it, Vanessa, I said. Don't touch it, Hunter warned, grabbing her hand. It is a trick. Open it, I commanded, my voice cracking like a whip. Vanessa pulled her hand away from Hunter. She reached out with trembling fingers and opened the cover. The first page was a summary. But it wasn't the numbers that caught her eye. It was the photographs. I watched her face. I saw the moment the confusion turned to horror. I saw her eyes widen as she looked at the pictures of the woman. The young brunette model. Amber. Who is she? Vanessa whispered. Keep turning the pages, I said. Vanessa turned the page. She saw the bank transfers. Rent. Car payments. Jewelry. Hunter. What is this? She asked, her voice rising to a panic. Why are you paying rent for an apartment in Midtown? Hunter tried to snatch the binder away. It is a consultant, he stammered. She helps with marketing. It is a business expense, Vanessa. Desi is trying to manipulate you. Marketing, I said dryly. Is that what you call it? Vanessa turned the next page, and there it was, the birth certificate. The room went so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming in the vents. My parents leaned in, squinting at the document. Barry Steinberg looked over Hunter's shoulder, and I saw the color drain from his face. Even the cheap lawyer knew that his case had just disintegrated. Lucas Rodriguez, the document read. Father Hunter Smith. Vanessa stared at the paper. She did not scream. She did not cry. She just stopped breathing for a moment. A baby, she whispered. You have a baby. Hunter stood there, his mouth opening and closing. The arrogance was gone. The bluster was gone. He looked like a man who had been caught standing naked in a spotlight. Vanessa, please. He began, his voice shaking. It was a mistake. It happened before. Well, not before, but during a break. It is complicated. Complicated, my mother shrieked. You have a bastard child. You have been stepping out on my daughter. My father, Otis, looked at Hunter with pure disgust. The man he had defended, the man he had called a son, was a traitor. I walked to the head of the table and placed my hands flat on the surface. So here is the counter offer, Hunter, I said. I looked him dead in the eye. You wanted $500,000. Instead, I am going to give you 5 minutes. 5 minutes to sign the divorce papers Sterling is about to put in front of you. 5 minutes to sign a confession of embezzlement, which will keep you out of jail if you agree to leave the state immediately. I pointed at the door. If you do not sign, I will hand this binder to the district attorney. You will go to prison for fraud. Your mistress will be subpoenaed. Your secret life will be front-page news. And you will never see a dime from me or anyone else ever again. I looked at Vanessa, who was still staring at the photo of the child. And you get nothing, I said to Hunter. Absolutely nothing. The room spun with the weight of the revelation. The trap had snapped shut, and the rat was finally caught. I did not speak. I did not raise my voice to match the volume of the accusations that had just filled the room. I did not look at my parents, who were sitting there with their arms crossed, waiting for me to write a check that would restore their comfortable delusion. Instead, I reached for the small silver remote control that sat in the center of the conference table. I pressed a single button. The lights in the room dimmed automatically, and a low hum filled the air as a large white screen descended from the ceiling behind me. Hunter stopped shouting mid-sentence. He looked at the screen, and then back at me. There was a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes now. He knew that I was not a woman who put on slideshows for entertainment. In my world, a presentation usually meant the end of a company or the termination of a career. I pressed the forward arrow on the remote. The screen illuminated with a harsh white light that made everyone squint. The first image was not a picture. It was a spreadsheet. It was a magnified view of the forensic accounting report Michael had prepared. The numbers were large and black against the white background. I saw Vanessa squinting at it through her dark sunglasses. She took them off slowly, revealing eyes that were red and puffy from days of crying. What is this? Vanessa whispered, her voice trembling. I used a laser pointer to circle a column of recurring payments. The red dot danced on the screen like a sniper scope. These are the withdrawals from the Hunter Tech Ventures business account. I said, my voice calm and clinical. You will notice the dates. Every Friday for the past 2 years, there has been a transfer of $4,000 to an entity listed as Amber Consulting. Hunter jumped up from his chair. That is proprietary business information, he yelled, his face turning a blotchy red. You have no right to show this. That is a consultant. She handles logistics and marketing. Sit down. Hunter Sterling barked from beside me. I ignored the outburst. I looked directly at Vanessa. Vanessa, I said softly. Do you remember last Christmas when you asked Hunter for money to buy Braden a new bicycle? Do you remember what he told you? Vanessa nodded slowly. Her eyes were fixed on the screen. He said business was tight, she whispered. He said all the capital was tied up in development software. I pointed the laser at a date on the screen. December 22nd. A transfer of $6,000 to a jewelry store in the Lenox Mall. He lied, I said. He bought a diamond tennis bracelet that day. Vanessa looked down at her wrist. It was bare. She looked at Hunter. He refused to meet her gaze, staring intently at the mahogany table. I clicked the button again. The spreadsheet vanished. In its place, a high-resolution photograph filled the wall. It was a picture taken from a distance, but the subjects were crystal clear. It showed Hunter sitting at an outdoor cafe table. He was wearing the blue linen shirt Vanessa had bought him for his birthday. He was laughing, his head thrown back in pure joy. Across from him, holding his hand across the table, was a woman. She was young, beautiful, with long dark hair and a smile that lit up her face. "Amber Consulting, I presume," I said dryly. My mother gasped. My father took off his glasses and wiped them as if the problem was with his lenses and not his son-in-law. "Hunter, that is. That is the girl from the coffee shop, isn't it?" Vanessa stammered, her voice trembling. "You said you were mentoring her. You said she was an intern who needed guidance." "Mentoring," I repeated. "Is that what they call it now?" I clicked the button again. The next photo was even more damaging. It showed Hunter and Amber walking out of a luxury apartment building in Midtown. His arm was wrapped possessively around her waist. Her head was resting on his shoulder. They looked like a couple in love. They looked like a couple who had no cares in the world. Vanessa let out a low, a sound of pure animal pain. She put her hand over her mouth, stifling a sob. But I was not done. I had to burn it all down to the ground so she could never rebuild it on a foundation of lies again. I clicked the button one last time. The final slide appeared. It was a split screen. On the left was a photograph of Hunter at Disneyland. He was wearing Mickey Mouse ears. He was holding a toddler on his shoulders. A little boy with curly hair and eyes that were undeniably Hunter's. Standing next to them was Amber, beaming at the camera. On the right side of the screen was a document. It was a paternity test result from a lab in Atlanta. The probability of paternity was highlighted in yellow, 99.9%. The room went absolutely silent. The kind of silence that happens after a bomb goes off before the screaming starts. Vanessa stared at the little boy on the screen. The boy who was getting trips to Disneyland, while her own son was getting told there was no money for toys. The boy who had a father who was present and happy, while her son had a father who was angry and distant. That is a baby," Vanessa whispered. Her voice broke. "You have a baby." Hunter sank back into his chair. He looked small. He looked deflated. There was no more fight in him. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no lie big enough to cover a child. It happened during a rough patch, Hunter mumbled, looking at the table. "I didn't know how to tell you. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me!" Vanessa screamed. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward with a crash. "You have a whole other family. You have a son. You stole my sister's money to feed your other family while I was clipping coupons." My mother Clara stood up. Her face was gray. She looked at the screen, at the evidence of the sin she had harbored in her family. She looked at Hunter, the man she had defended, the man she had told me to forgive, because he was a godly man. "You have a bastard child," she rasped, clutching her chest. "You brought shame into this house." And then my mother did something she had never done in her life. Her eyes rolled back in her head, her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. Mom Vanessa screamed, turning away from her husband to her mother. Chaos erupted. My father fell to his knees beside her, patting her cheek frantically. "Clara! Clara, wake up!" he shouted. I sat perfectly still. I watched the scene unfold with a detachment that frightened even me. My mother was fainting from the shock of the truth. My sister was sobbing over the corpse of her marriage. My brother-in-law was looking for an exit like a trapped rat. I looked at Michael. He nodded and poured a glass of water from the carafe. Barry Steinberg, the cheap lawyer, stood up and closed his briefcase. I think my services are no longer required here," he mumbled. "I do not handle family law or criminal fraud." He walked out quickly, leaving his client alone to face the firing squad. Hunter looked at me. His face was drained of blood, leaving him looking like a ghost. His eyes were pleading. "Desi, please," he whispered. "You made your point. Turn it off." I looked at the remote in my hand. "No, Hunter," I said. "Look at it. Look at your son. Look at the life you bought with my money." Vanessa was on the floor holding our mother's hand, but she was looking up at Hunter. The look on her face was not sadness anymore. It was hatred, pure, unadulterated hatred. "Get out," Vanessa hissed. Hunter blinked. "What? I said get out!" she screamed, her voice tearing through her throat. "Get out of this room. Get out of my life. Get out before I kill you." Hunter scrambled up. He looked at me, then at his wife, then at his unconscious mother-in-law. He realized he had no allies left in the room. He turned and ran toward the door, stumbling over his own feet. I waited until the door closed behind him. Then, and only then, did I press the button to raise the screen. The image of the happy secret family vanished, leaving only a blank white wall. My mother groaned and began to stir. My father helped her sit up. I stood up and walked around the table. I did not go to comfort them. I went to the window. The demolition was complete. The building had come down. Now all that was left was to sweep up the debris. Sterling gathered the papers. "I will have the divorce petition ready by the end of the day," he said quietly. I nodded. I looked out at the city. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. And finally, for the first time in years, my family was seeing things clearly, even if they had to faint to do it. The silence in the conference room was absolute. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a life crashing down in real time. My mother was sitting in a chair now, fanning herself with a legal pad, her face ashen. My father was staring at the floor, unable to look at the man he had treated like a son for 5 years. And Vanessa. My sister Vanessa was staring at the blank white screen where the picture of her husband's secret family had been just moments ago. She looked like a statue carved out of grief and humiliation. I walked back to the head of the table. I did not sit down. I wanted the height advantage. I wanted to loom over them like the judge, jury, and executioner that I effectively was. Hunter was standing near the door, poised to run, but he knew he couldn't. He knew that if he walked out that door without my permission, he would be walking into a jail cell. He looked at me, his eyes darting back and forth like a trapped animal. "Daisy," he croaked, his voice dry and broken. "What do you want? You have won. You destroyed me. What more do you want?" I looked at Sterling. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out 2 thick folders. One was red, one was blue. He slid them across the polished mahogany table until they rested directly in front of Hunter. "I do not want anything from you, Hunter," I said, my voice ice cold. "You have nothing of value to offer me. You have spent my money, you have wasted my time, and you have broken my family. You are bankrupt in every sense of the word." I pointed to the red folder. "But I am a businesswoman," I continued. "And in business we always provide options. So here are your options." Hunter looked down at the red folder. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely touch it. "Option A," I said. "That contains a formal criminal complaint drafted by my legal team. It outlines 18 counts of wire fraud, 12 counts of embezzlement, and 1 count of identity theft for the loans you took out in my name." I leaned forward, resting my knuckles on the table. "If I file this document with the district attorney this afternoon, you will be arrested before sunset. Given the amount of money involved, nearly $300,000, you are looking at a minimum of 15 years in a federal penitentiary." 15 years, Hunter. You will miss your son growing up. You will miss your daughter growing up. You will be an old man with a felony record when you finally see the sun again. Hunter went pale. He looked at the red folder as if it were a bomb. 15 years, he whispered. "Desi, please. I cannot go to prison. I am not a criminal." "You are a criminal," I corrected him. "You just haven't been convicted yet." I pointed to the blue folder. Then there is option B. Hunter looked at the blue folder with a glimmer of hope. Option B is a settlement agreement, I explained. In this folder you will find a confession of judgment. By signing this, you admit to the debt. You accept full legal responsibility for every cent you stole. You agree that the debt is yours and yours alone. I paused, letting the next part sink in. You also agree to an uncontested divorce from Vanessa effective immediately. You waive all rights to marital assets because, frankly, there are no assets, only debt. You agree to leave the state of Georgia within 48 hours. And you agree to a permanent restraining order. If you ever contact me, my sister, or our parents again, the deal is void and I file the criminal charges. Hunter looked at the blue folder. He looked at Vanessa. Divorce, he stammered. But I love her. Do not insult my intelligence, Hunter, I snapped. You love her money, you love the lifestyle I provided, and you love the cover she gave you while you played house with your mistress. That ride is over. I looked at my watch. You have 2 minutes to decide, prison or poverty. Those are your choices. Hunter looked at Vanessa. He took a step toward her. Ness, he pleaded, using her pet name. Ness, please tell her. You cannot let her do this. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. I made a mistake, but I love you. Vanessa looked up. Her eyes were empty. The spark that had always defined her, the entitlement, the vanity, it was all gone. She looked at the man she had worshipped. She looked at the man who had bought a pony for another woman's child while she begged her sister for groceries. She did not say a word. She just turned her head away. Hunter looked back at me. He realized he had no leverage. He realized that the flying monkeys were gone. The church ladies were gone, and his charm had run dry. He reached for the pen Sterling was holding out. His hand was trembling violently. If I sign this, he whispered, you won't press charges. If you sign it and disappear, I said, then you stay free. You will be broke. You will be in debt for the rest of your life. But you will be free. Hunter gripped the pen. He looked at the red folder one last time, imagining the prison bars. Then he opened the blue folder. He flipped to the last page. He signed. The scratching of the pen on the paper was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of a parasite detaching itself. He signed the confession. He signed the divorce papers. He signed the restraining order. Sterling took the folder back, immediately checking the signatures. It is done, Sterling said. I looked at Hunter. Get out, I said. You have 48 hours to leave Atlanta. If my private investigators see you in this city on Sunday morning, I make the call. Hunter stood up. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He did not look at Vanessa. He did not look at my parents. He turned and walked out of the room, his shoulders slumped, a defeated man carrying nothing but the weight of his own failures. The door clicked shut. The room exhaled. My mother was weeping softly into her hands. My father was staring out the window. But I was not done. I turned slowly to Vanessa. She was sitting there staring at the empty chair where her husband had been. She looked small. She looked fragile. She looked like she was waiting for me to come over and hug her. She was waiting for me to tell her it would be okay, that I would fix it, that I would pay for the divorce lawyer and set her up in a new apartment. I walked over to her. I stood next to her chair. Vanessa looked up at me. Her lip quivered. Desi, she whispered, reaching out a hand. He is gone. He is really gone. What am I going to do? I have nothing. She waited for the rescue. I did not take her hand. You have a choice, Vanessa. I said, my voice devoid of the warmth she expected. She blinked, confused. A choice. Yes, I said. You have a choice to make right now. I pointed to the door where Hunter had just exited. You can run after him. You can forgive him like you always do. You can follow him out of this state and live in a motel room while he gambles away his next paycheck. You can be the martyr wife who stands by her man even when he has a secret baby and steals from her sister. Vanessa shook her head. No, Desi. I hate him. Good, I said. Then here is your second choice. I leaned down so our faces were level. You can sign the divorce papers, you can go to the courthouse, and then you can go out into the real world and get a job. Vanessa recoiled. A job? Yes, I said. A job. You are 31 years old, Vanessa. You are able-bodied. You have 2 hands and a brain. You can work retail. You can wait tables. You can answer phones. But what about the house? Vanessa stammered. What about Braden's school? What about our life? Your life is over, I said brutally. The life where you sit by the pool while I pay the bills is dead. I evicted you, remember. You have to be out by tomorrow. Vanessa began to cry harder. But Desi, you can't be serious. You have so much money. You just saved me from him. You can't just leave me on the street. I am your sister. I stood up straight. I am your sister, I replied. I am not your ATM. I am not your husband. And I am certainly not your doormat anymore. I walked back to the head of the table and picked up my briefcase. I will not see you starve, Vanessa. If you get a job and prove to me that you can stand on your own 2 feet for 6 months, I might consider helping you with a deposit on a small apartment. A very small apartment. But until then, you are on your own. On my own, she sobbed. I don't know how to be on my own. Then you better learn fast, I said, because the free ride is over. I looked at my parents. That goes for you too, I said. The insurance is canceled. The allowance is stopped. If you want expensive medicine, Dad, I suggest you sell your golf clubs. Or maybe you can ask the church to take up a collection. My father opened his mouth to speak, but shame silenced him. I walked to the door. I paused with my hand on the handle. Vanessa was weeping with her head on the table. The sound filled the room. It was a sad sound, but it was a necessary sound. It was the sound of a child finally being forced to grow up. Hunter signed the papers because he was a coward, I said, looking back at them. Now let us see if you have the courage to be a woman, Vanessa. I opened the door and walked out into the hallway. I felt lighter than air. The weight of 3 adult humans had been lifted off my back. I walked past the receptionist who gave me a nervous smile. I pressed the elevator button. Going down, she asked. No, I said, stepping into the car and pressing the button for the lobby. I am going up. The deadline set by the sheriff arrived at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. It was a humid Georgia morning, the air thick with moisture that made clothes stick to skin. I was not there to see it personally. I did not need to be. My property manager stood across the street filming the entire procedure on his phone to ensure legal compliance. I watched the video file later from the comfort of my home office while sipping a freshly brewed cappuccino. The video showed a moving truck pulling away from the curb. It was not a professional moving company. It was a rental truck driven by a friend of a friend, presumably paid in beer and pizza because there was no cash left to pay for labor. Vanessa walked out of the front door carrying a box of clothes. She looked back at the colonial pillars she had claimed were hers for so long. She looked back at the manicured lawn where she used to host garden parties and looked down on her guests. Then the sheriff stepped forward. He checked the empty rooms. He verified that the occupants had vacated, and then he closed the heavy oak door. He took a padlock from his belt and secured the hasp. He placed a new sticker on the door. Possession returned to owner. No trespassing. The kingdom had fallen not with a bang, but with the sharp click of a padlock. Vanessa got into the passenger seat of her mother's old sedan because her luxury SUV had been repossessed days ago. She did not look back as the car drove away. The fall was swift, and it was brutal. Vanessa moved into an apartment complex called The Pines, located on the outskirts of the city near the airport. It was a place where the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors arguing and the carpet smelled of decades of stale cigarette smoke. It was a 2-bedroom unit, but the second bedroom was barely large enough for Braden's twin bed. There was no swimming pool. There was no granite island. There was only a dripping faucet and a view of a dumpster. She did not have time to mourn her lost lifestyle because reality had teeth and it was biting hard. With no husband to support her and no sister to subsidize her, she had to do the one thing she had mocked me for doing. She had to work. Vanessa got a job at Walmart. It was the only place hiring immediately that did not require a degree she didn't have. She worked the checkout line. I sent a private investigator to check on her 2 weeks later, not to harass her, but to verify that she was holding up her end of the bargain. The report he sent back was detailed. It described Vanessa standing at register 4 wearing a blue vest that was 2 sizes too big. She spent 8 hours a day scanning items. Beep, beep, beep. The sound was the soundtrack of her new life. She scanned frozen pizzas for mothers who looked just like she used to look. She bagged cheap toys for children who reminded her of Brayden. One afternoon, the report said a customer began screaming at her because a coupon for 50 cents off laundry detergent had expired. "You are incompetent," the customer yelled. "Can't you read? It is expired. Do your job properly." Vanessa stood there taking the abuse. She looked down at her shoes. They were sneakers she had bought from the discount rack because her heels were useless for standing all day. "I am sorry, ma'am," Vanessa whispered. "I will call a manager." She had become the help. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. During her break that day, Vanessa walked to the magazine rack near the front of the store. She was looking for a distraction, something to take her mind off her aching feet and the humiliating stain on her vest. Her eyes scanned the rows of glossy covers: People magazine, Vogue, and then Forbes. She stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. Staring back at her from the cover of Forbes Women was a face she knew better than her own. It was me. I was wearing a white power suit, standing with my arms crossed, looking confident and untouchable. The headline next to my face read, "The Art of the Clean Break: How Desiree Washington Built an Empire by Cutting Toxic Assets." Vanessa reached out with a trembling hand. She touched the glossy paper. She looked at the diamond earrings I was wearing. She looked at the peace in my eyes. She pulled the magazine off the rack. She opened it to the feature article. She read the first paragraph standing there in the middle of the store while the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. "Success requires clarity," the article began. "Sometimes the hardest investments to liquidate are the emotional ones. But once you realize that your value is being drained by people who do not appreciate your worth, you have a fiduciary duty to yourself to walk away." Vanessa closed the magazine. She held it to her chest, and right there in aisle 1 next to the chewing gum and the batteries she began to cry. It was not a tantrum. It was not a performance. It was the silent, shaking grief of a woman who realized she had held a winning lottery ticket in her hand for years and had thrown it away because she wanted a prettier wrapper. My parents did not fare much better. The humiliation of the pharmacy incident and the revelation of Hunter's secret life had shattered their social standing. But the financial blow was the final nail in the coffin. Without my monthly allowance and facing a mountain of legal bills from Hunter's initial arrest, they were drowning. They tried to keep up appearances for a week, but the math was unforgiving. They listed their house. The house I had grown up in. The house where I was always the guest and never the priority. It sold quickly but for far less than they expected. Most of the proceeds went to pay off the second mortgage they had secretly taken out to fund their country club lifestyle. They moved into a facility called Shady Oaks. The brochure called it an assisted living community. In reality, it was a budget nursing home. My father, Otis, sat in a shared room staring at a small television. There were no golf courses here. There were no waiters bringing him scotch. There was only a cafeteria that served meatloaf on Tuesdays and bingo on Thursdays. He spent his days telling anyone who would listen about how rich his daughter was, but nobody believed him. To them, he was just another old man in a cardigan who had been left behind. My mother, Clara, became the woman she used to mock. She sat in the common room judging the other residents' outfits, clutching a Bible that she had never really understood. She told the nurses that I was busy traveling Europe, that I was going to come pick them up soon. But the phone in their room never rang. And then there was Hunter, the man who wanted $500,000 for his pain and suffering, the man who had a secret family and a gambling addiction. Hunter did not stay in Atlanta. He couldn't. The bookies he owed money to were not as polite as I was. They did not file lawsuits. They broke kneecaps. When Hunter realized I wasn't going to bail him out, he ran. He packed a duffel bag and fled in the middle of the night, leaving Vanessa and his son behind without a backward glance. He drove his mother's old car until it broke down in Alabama. The last I heard from my investigator, Hunter, was working under the table in Mississippi. He was a laborer on a construction site pouring concrete in the sweltering heat. The report included a blurry photo. It showed Hunter sitting on a cooler during a lunch break eating a sandwich wrapped in foil. His expensive haircut was gone, replaced by a buzz cut. His manicured hands were rough and covered in gray dust. He looked exhausted. He looked broken. He was finally living the life he had tried so hard to avoid. He was working for a living, and every dollar he earned went to paying off the debts that were slowly suffocating him. I closed the file on my computer. I looked around my penthouse. It was quiet. It was peaceful. The toxic waste had been removed. The parasites had been exterminated. I stood up and walked to the balcony. The wind whipped through my hair. Below me, the city of Atlanta sparkled like a sea of diamonds. I thought about Vanessa scanning groceries. I thought about my parents in their small room. I thought about Hunter pouring concrete. I felt a moment of sadness for the little girl who had just wanted them to love her. But then I felt a wave of gratitude for the woman who had finally learned to love herself enough to let them go. I went back inside and packed my suitcase. My flight to the Maldives was leaving in 3 hours, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't bringing any baggage with me. The cabin of the Emirates, A380, was quiet. It was a silence that cost $12,000. I sat in my private suite watching the golden bubbles rise in my crystal flute of Dom Perignon. The flight attendant, a woman with a gentle smile, had just cleared my dinner service, leaving me with a small plate of artisan chocolates. I reclined the leather seat, turning it into a bed. Outside the double-paned window, the world was nothing but a blanket of white clouds bathed in moonlight. I was 30,000 feet above the mess I had left behind in Atlanta. My phone, which I had kept on airplane mode for the first few hours, lay on the side table. I decided to check it one last time before disconnecting completely. I connected to the onboard Wi-Fi. Immediately, a solitary email pushed through the filter. It was from a new address I did not recognize, but I knew the sender instantly. The subject line read, "Please come home. Mom is sick." I opened it. "Desi, please answer me," Vanessa wrote. "Mom is in the hospital. She had chest pains after you left the meeting. She is calling your name. She is scared, Desi. We are sorry. We really are. Please come back and help us. We cannot do this without you. We need you." I stared at the words glowing on the screen. A week ago, this email would have sent me into a panic. I would have turned the car around. I would have called the best doctors in the state. I would have opened my checkbook to fix the problem just like I always did. But tonight, I looked at the words, and I saw them for what they were. Bait. It was the last desperate attempt of a parasite trying to reattach itself to the host. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she wasn't. But my mother had a husband. She had a daughter named Vanessa. She had a community at her church. She had people. I was no longer one of those people. I did not feel a pang of guilt. I felt the cool, smooth glass in my hand. I tapped the screen. I did not hit reply. I hit delete. Then I went into my settings and added the email address to my blocked list. I set the phone down face down on the marble console. They say that blood is thicker than water. It is a phrase used to keep people trapped in cycles of abuse. It is a phrase used to excuse disrespect and manipulate loyalty. But what they forget to tell you is that blood can get infected. Sometimes blood can become toxic. And when a limb is gangrenous, you do not keep it because it is part of you. You cut it off to save the rest of the body. I am no longer the dutiful daughter. I am no longer the invisible sister. I am no longer the bank. I am Desi, and I am finally free. I took a sip of the champagne. It tasted like victory. I pressed the button to dim the window shade. The screen faded to black. The soft rhythm of the engines hummed a lullaby. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 34 years, I fell into a sleep that was entirely my own. This story teaches us that your value is not determined by how much you can give to others, but by how much you respect yourself. Desi's journey proves that financial independence is the ultimate shield against toxicity. We often hold on to family ties out of obligation even when those ties are strangling us. But true family supports you, they do not drain you. Walking away from people who hurt you, even if they share your DNA, is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. You teach people how to treat you, and sometimes the most powerful lesson you can teach is your absence. If this story inspired you to stand your ground, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice and resilience. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save your own peace? Tell me your story in the comments below, because your experience might give someone else the courage to break free. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are the CEO of your own life. Do not let anyone else run your business.